You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 385, Tempest Runner. We are going to be covering the latest audio drama, Star Wars audio drama, written and scripted by Cavan Scott, who you may know if you've been following the High Republic with any kind of regularity. And with a cast of a number of incredible voice actors, including Mark Thompson and a number of other ones we're going to touch base here on in just a little bit. But speaking of very famous celebrities, please welcome to the show. Now that your eyes don't deceive you, in full 1080p HD, maybe. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I am exhausted, but I'm excited to talk about this, and I'm glad we are because I mean, it's been like almost it's been 3-4 weeks now. But even still, like if you add in the time that we got to listen to it, there was like maybe about a 2-week lead time before it came out. Now it's been about a month. So, I mean, as I was going through the show notes, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember this now. So it's been a while, and I'm just glad to finally talk about it. We've not been able to really.
It's one of the double-edged swords of getting advanced media reader copies is that by the time it comes, sometimes we only get things a couple of days in advance, if at all, or the day of sometimes. But then every once in a while, things will come in a full month in advance. Like Ronin came in, and it doesn't come, but we can't talk about it until the 22nd, until Visions comes out, even though Ronin doesn't come out until October.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, by that point, it's going to be a full 3 weeks. And I don't know if you've been reading much of that one yet, but it's I love the writing style.
I've heard a lot of great things about it. I know a lot of people that have the ARCs have cracked it open, and some have already completed, obviously, and have been gushing about it without spoiling it. So I'm pretty excited.
Physical copies, or they just have the?
No, I meant not crack it open the literal sense.
Oh, but, yeah. I was about to be very jealous.
No, I don't know of any physical copies that are gonna. Now they usually, we don't have time for this, but usually they will send they'll send a physical copy, a week before as well, in addition to the digital one. So.
Right, but you're right. We do have a lot of news and a lot of Tempest Runner to get to. So let's get started.
So before we go any further, we've had this is hurricane weather season, and I know Ida and Nicholas have both hit here pretty recently. So I know from both of us, shout out to everybody that was impacted. I know you had a little bit of not too bad there in Houston. I think we were worried about you there for a while, but
yeah, thankfully it veered off. But yeah, Louisiana and Eastern Texas, around the coast for Nicholas, got hammered. So yeah, a lot of thoughts, and of course, all the way up to the Northeast. I was shocked about this, but we're thinking about you guys. We certainly appreciate all the challenge this brings, and it's a lot of hopeless days, but there are brighter days ahead, and we'll rebuild and we'll make it through.
Yep. And not to continue the show.
Let's continue the sad news.
Yeah, on the downer here, but Tom Kane is officially retired. So
yeah, his daughter Sam had a Facebook post about it, and it was very humorous, I think, but at the same time, it was also, you could hear the frustration of someone that they just like to talk to. And not being able to do that with the same dialogue and things like that is really, really tough to hear. But they do seem to be in good spirits at the very least. But that's really sad news. That's a big loss for us. He voiced so many characters in Clone Wars, and did he do any for Rebels, or was it just Clone Wars?
I don't know that he did any in Rebels. If he did, there were minor parts. It wasn't anything major.
Right.
But so yeah, no, it's a huge loss, and somebody that their whole career is essentially based on their voice and not being able to do that. I mean, that's just got to be heartbreaking for him just on a personal level. But he's got his health and he's still around, and it sounds like he said, I've seen some of the posts, they've been pretty funny. So he seems to be taking this in stride and doing the best he can. So extremely happy that he's still around with us. Okay, so let's get better.
Let's perk things up a little bit.
Right, here. Let's get on the up and up here. So Mandalorian, 7 Emmy wins, and these were all a lot of the technical ones that they've done. I think the Emmys are this Sunday. Is that right? As of this recording, I think they're this weekend. And I know it's up for a couple of them. I don't remember how many and what, but yeah, pretty huge wins there for that. I don't know that I didn't even see the competition, to be honest, but given what they're using these days for a lot of the tech, both sound and audio, it's probably fair. I'm going to just be unbiased or biased, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, and visual effects and makeup for the Jedi for Ahsoka, of course, was a big one as well. I think the Jedi had 2 or 3 in there, and the Rescue had one for choreography. So it
Mm,
was, but again, cleaning house. It's great to see that representation for the Disney Plus. It really those series in general are doing very well.
yeah.
You know, Netflix type the style of TV and movie making is doing really well. So it's nice that it's getting rewarded in that way, and it still baffles me to see Star Wars win an award. You know, especially something of film quality because it's always been so elusive for the
Right.
franchise.
Overlooked at times. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's I mean they won a ton of them last year too, but this seems like
Right.
it's kind of stacked now. So we'll see if they get some of the bigger ones here come this weekend. Hopefully they do. I know the Pedro Pascal I think was nominated. So probably all due respect there. So
Hey, Albert, I hear there's a new game coming out.
yeah,
I don't
something
know if you've heard of it.
no, SWOTOR, no, it's Star
Old
Wars The Old Republic, that's
The
what it
Old
was.
Republic. It has
Yeah,
a guy in a
KOTOR,
mask.
Knights of the
Yeah.
Old Republic, that's it. Sorry, I didn't even get the
Oh,
name
there we
right.
go.
No, I've never heard of it actually.
Oh, KOTOR. Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, it's coming out. This is see, I wasn't gonna get a PS5 because like, I don't really need it. Nothing's out. Now I'm like, oh crud, I need a PS5. So I'll get on the waiting list. I'll have mine sometime in 2023, 2024 once they get more once the allocations have happened. But yeah, this is pretty exciting. It is a remake, right? So I don't anticipate we'll get the same exact story beats throughout all of it.
Right.
It sounds like they've got a new writer coming in. She's a huge fan of this game though. Don't get me wrong. I know there's some scuttlebutt going on out there with the fandom menace and talking about how this is going to be a woke remake and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, KOTOR will be a remake. I don't know though on the canon perspective because Matt Martin. This is what drives me nuts sometimes. Those guys. So Matt Martin has a story group. They ask him specifically, "Is it canon?" He's like, "Well, the article says it all, right?" He refers them to the article. Well, if you read the article, in my opinion, it's not 100% clear, right? I can see it both ways, and I can see where people are getting kind of lost or maybe confused about whether or not it's canon versus not. And so, as of this recording, again, I haven't really been following to find out if anybody's come out with any kind of definitive answer. What really kind of gnaws at me is if Matt Martin knows what they're very elusive when and not just saying yes, it's canon, right, or no, it's not canon, it's Legends. Instead, they defer off to something else. And it's like, why won't you just, it's like a very political, like a politician type move, right? Never really go on record with a statement, a definitive statement, leave it kind of nebulous, leave it open, leave it to interpretation. And that does more, I think, injustice. And so either he doesn't know and he's trying to save face, or maybe he does know and he's really just being honest and doesn't realize what's happening here. At the end of the day, I don't think it really matters to me so much. I would love for them to say it is canon. And this remake is now, instead of 25,000 years, 15,000 years in the past where the Old Republic is, we're going to bump that all the way up to like 1,000 years. And I think that would make sense given where we're seeing in like the High Republic, some of the tech that we're seeing, right? And the space travel and hyperspace and all that. That doesn't seem to align with this huge gap of thousands and thousands of years, not to mention aesthetically. It's always been one of my, as much as I love all that, the Old Republic, aesthetically, it doesn't look that different. Like it doesn't feel like 20,000 years of evolution have occurred.
Right.
And so there's a suspension of disbelief there. So I would love for him to say, it's canon. It's a remake. It's 1,000 years. That's when the Old Republic is. That aligns with what Obi-Wan said, right? 1,000 generations or 100 generations, whatever it is. That's more in line with this rather than going out so far. But that's my piece. What do you think? You excited about it? Did you play the original?
I never made it through. I like watching I'll watch all the cinematic scenes afterwards and the cut scenes. That's kind of more my gig. I don't really want to have to play them anymore.
Yeah.
I'm old. I can't. Well, I just don't want to spend the time doing it, but I'd rather do other things. But it's really cool. I'm really happy to see this in a very modern, CGI style, right? And just have that modern take on it. I am curious how much of the story will change or will it evolve, because I'm with you. I think some of it has got to get rearranged and realigned with what we know the High Republic to be now, and just how far back is all this stuff really.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with you. I think there's gonna have to be a little bit of course correction there. The one thing that always surprises me, because I've seen some of the comments on online about what they're going to do with this thing and whether it's canon or not and all that. And I'm like, you know what? When I think about Spider-Man video games or something like that, I don't really hear all the drama about whether it's canon or not. and they've got an MCU and they've got multiple comic books and they don't always ever line up really. And then they reboot it and they change it. And I just like, what? It's a video game. Why does it have to be such a huge deal for it to be canon or not canon? Now, I'll answer my own question with that and say that we're really desperate for this story to be canonized in some way. We know the characters are in some regard, but the story aspect is not. And so I think we are interested to hear if the general story is going to be canon adjacent, I guess it was the term for a while.
Yeah.
Or whatnot. But anyway, it's really cool to see them redo it. I mean, we don't have original ideas, so we'll just remake what we've already got. It fits right with the narrative there. So we'll just keep on rolling with it. But it was fun to see that, which is odd because they just released all this on mobile and stuff, but whatever.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. I've got them on the iPad. I don't want to, I'm not going to take too much time, but I just need to show you this thing. Look at this thing.
1,300 pages of love, man.
Of love, man. Exactly. We'll talk about this more on the Patreon show when we do that this week.
Well, tell your audio listeners what you held up there.
The Old Republic Omnibus. It is like the definitive collection of all the Old Republic stories, and it's got all this artwork in it as well. So if you're a fan of like the Revanites, everything that happened during the Old Republic, and want a physical copy, don't have the originals, and want more than the digital, this is the thing to go. This sent me back about $150 or something like that. So it's not, it's pretty steep, but man, it is so amazing.
So if you want to go look at the pretty colors of the cover, you can just go out into Twitter or at the Cantina Cast, and you can just go look at the pictures that Albert posted a few days ago.
Yeah, I've got more too. There's some with me lying next to it in bed. I've got some where it's sitting next to it on my car seat there on the passenger side. We've had a very
on the ceiling. Or
we've had a very close relationship, me and this book. We got two posters. I know you had those ready. We've got the English poster and the Japanese poster for Star Wars Visions, and those looked pretty darn amazing. There's the Japanese one. You want to flip through, and the American one, or the U.S. one, I guess, or North American one, looks pretty much the same. Well, it is the same. It's just the font's different. So
right, doesn't let me do more than one at a time. So
no, that's lame. Who's paying for this thing? But yeah, I like it. I mean, I know there were other, what was it? The IMAX Rogue One poster was almost identical in terms of its composition. And so it, for whatever that's worth, but this looks really great. And I'm so damn excited about this. We've got how many more days? 8? About a week, more than just a week away.
Right. Yeah. And is this the first time we've seen an X-Wing for this series?
There was not one in the trailer that I recall. Yeah. No. So
I don't remember that either. So that was interesting to.
No, not an X-Wing. There was that TIE fighter.
Mm-hmm.
But no X-Wing that I recall.
Okay. Well, it's pretty neat though. I mean, there's so much white space, which just makes all the colors just pop, which I think was such a great choice. And so many people are afraid of white space. I mean, literal white space in this case, but still. But yeah, those are super fun.
Yep. That's coming out. We'll be hitting that pretty hard once it releases. We've also got the, so they did this whole thing, and I've not read these, so we'll keep this short because I don't have anything to add here, but they did the villains and the heroes of Star Wars Visions and kind of gave you some more background on them. So I think will be essential as we get closer to release, and it would be a nice little kind of a companion to kind of reference before you're going into an episode, or maybe even after for that matter. But what stood out for you on the villains and the heroes?
Yeah, so these are out at StarWars.com. We'll link them in the show notes if Albert would be so kind when he posts the show. And so basically, they did an interview with the producers of the show, and they just ran through 4 or 5 of each of the characters. And I think there's a couple that really do stand out. And I think the one that there's 2 that are probably the people gravitate to, and that's the twins, right? So Kara and oh gosh, I already forgot his name.
Kara
Am. I think his name is Am.
Oh, Am. Kara, yeah. Kara and
There you go. Thank you for pronouncing it more correctly for me. And then there's another one that's really interesting. And then we've got the Elder and we've got the Duel, of course. But the one that's actually interesting to me on the light side of things is F, which is part of the Village Bride. And the reason why I thought that was interesting is because, I'll just read this here for you guys. So it says, one avenue explored in the Village Bride is the idea of the Force and how different cultures might interpret the mystical energy field. For F, it represents a chance to learn. This short introduces the Force in a unique way, Shirasaki says. People of planet Kelia don't know the concept of the Force, but they interpret it in their own way. They call it Magina.
Yeah, Magina. Mm-hmm.
and use it to connect them with the nature around them. So it's kind of an interesting take on the Force. And of course, we're always interested in any unique takes on it, and connecting with nature and anything like that, of course, starts to call a little bit into the Avar Chris type of way of thinking a little bit too. And then on the evil side, the Inquisitor sounds really, really cool. Because as he fights, he becomes more animal-like, exposing a mouthful of teeth as he screams in anger.
Nice.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah. No, I
We'll
can't
take it.
say I've seen that in any of the movies.
Nope.
But yeah, no, this is great, man. There's just so much good stuff that's going to come out of this. I know it, and I already said, just go ahead and sign me up for season 2 and 3. Right.
Right.
What are we waiting
Let's go
for?
and announce it.
Yep. Okay, and then we finally got a trailer for Star Wars Hunters. So that was the this one seems more like I'm going to call it a Fortnite kind of game, but it's more like what's the other one that
It's almost like Galaxy of Heroes.
yeah, maybe.
Kinda.
Yeah, maybe. But I thought
like
it looked squad based combat type thing, like running around though, not
Oh,
like
is it?
turn style. Yeah, I don't think it's like.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was RPG style. I got lost in the cinematic view of the things, but
Yep. But either way, what Nintendo Switch? We got it at coming out
Yeah.
for iPhones, Android.
right, sometime in 2022.
Yeah, I imagine they're going to release that on other systems at some point. All right, they usually have the exclusives, get all the hype going, and then later on they, give in and release a special edition for
Right.
the other consoles and stuff. So
And oh, by the way, Albert, there's an X-wing at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. I don't know if you knew that.
no,
But-
I did not.
Adam Savage posted a video on YouTube, and we'll link this as well. But Poe's X-wing, which will include R2D2, actually, not BB-8, is going to be in the Smithsonian. They're prepping it right now because it's going to be hung, and really the prop, and this is a full size prop. The prop is really supposed to be set on the ground, so they're having to reinforce and do different things so you can hang it. Which, if you've been to the Smithsonian, you've seen lots of things hung. And some of the
Right.
airports, I think, have planes and stuff that are hung. This thing is going to be amazing. And so it's about a 5 or 7 minute video, something like that. And he's talking with someone at the museum there and what they're doing to get it ready and just kind of what goes into it. But pretty neat. They're going to have a piece of Star Wars on display at the National Air and Space Museum. That's pretty neat.
As they should.
Right. And so there's a bit of a question about, well, why would you have something that's not real in the Smithsonian? I think, and the idea behind it, they said, is that it's really there to spawn creativity and imagination and that next version of thinking. So the people that go into the museum now are going to be thinking up ideas, and what are they going to draw inspiration from in the future?
Yeah.
And why not Star Wars? We get a lot of this from our pop culture and everything else, right? Of where we go with
Exactly.
it. So
Yeah.
why not put that on display? It's an important part of where we go, not necessarily where we've been.
Do they have like a Star Trek Enterprise hanging there yet? Because I think there's going to be some really upset people that.
Oh, probably.
But yeah, all right. Well, and
They'll live.
it's really not a like that actually bugs me that R2 is going to be in that. Like, why would you put R2? He's not.
It's a little odd.
Yeah, like throw BB-8 in there. That's what everybody knows. That's under the age of 20 that grew up with these movies. They know R2, but
Right.
that's not Poe's droid. That's on his hey buddy kind of thing. So
She was very articulate about R2. So I don't think she was misspeaking. But I'm with you. It was a bit.
that's very odd. Yeah.
But maybe it's a way to link.
Yeah, the old and the
original
new.
and sequel. Yeah,
Yeah.
old and new. Right.
Well, okay. Well, cool. Either way, it's great that it's going to be there. It is real. It's real to me, as Chef Chris says as well. Yeah, it's real.
All right.
I'm here. Speaking of thanks to everybody for joining the live show. We got Tuan in here, Staff, Risk, Alejandro, and Chris as well. Probably some other people that haven't chimed in just yet.
Yep. Thank you for all the stalkers. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you just, looking. That's right.
Albert appreciates a good creeper.
Yeah, sometimes it all depends.
It depends how if you catch him or not.
Yeah. Okay.
And all of a sudden, the number of people watching just ticked up a couple.
just drops. We've got a lot to talk about. So we're going to break open Tempest Runner, the audio drama, like we said. And so let's just start with kind of opening thoughts, and I'll just make it quick. For me, I thought it was a really good audio drama. I did a little spoiler-free teaser about this a few weeks ago. And in there, I felt like it really felt like the best one that we've had so far. there were things that bothered me about it, and I'll just get this. Overall, I loved the writing. The script was amazing, especially when I want to just be able to read it without hearing the voice actors. I had some issues with the voice actors, but that's no shade on them. It's just my own personal feelings about it. But overall, I thought it was a really great production. The only feedback I had was one, I didn't feel like they used enough of the old music from Star Wars, or even the Kevin Kiner stuff, or the Michael Giacchino stuff. Michael Giacchino stuff.
Yeah.
I felt like they didn't use enough of that. The sound effects were fine. Some of them were kind of our tried and true classic audiobook sound effects that we've had, but there were just some of the actors were a little like the main girl, like Lourna Dee. Like there were moments where I thought she did amazing, but then she was, and I said this to you before we even talked about it. I said I had one problem with it, and you were like, "What?" And I said there was a lot of air. It was a real airy, like the entire time. And with her acting, it just felt like I know it's
too.
Yeah, and Tasia as well. Yep. And their voices were kind of close. I mean, one was doing a Russian accent, and the other was doing a French accent, I think, which is what she should be doing as a Twi'lek. But again, it wasn't critical, and it wasn't anything that made me just, like I can't listen to this thing. I couldn't stop listening to this thing because I was so fascinated with her background, and it wasn't really fair now. Like, I don't feel like it's fair. Like, he's now elevated Lourna Dee, a character who I really didn't care about, to be honest, before this Tempest Runner, up into a character I just want to know even more about by the end of it, which was probably the intent. But we'll talk about that maybe later. But just questions about, okay, so where does this go from here with her, and why spotlight a character like this? Are they going to go back and do this for other characters? Why didn't we get this for like an Avar Kriss? Why didn't we get this for? And now their story may be played out, in the novels, but this was a really good, solid one that was done for Lourna Dee, and I hope they did this because they are signaling that she is going to be a character that's going to be around for a very, very long time. So I'll just leave it at that because I wanted to keep it short, but give me your thoughts on how you felt about the audio drama.
Right. Yeah. And actually, we reached out to people after this had time to be absorbed, a little bit of asking who was now the bigger threat to the Jedi of the Republic. Was it Ro or was it Dee? Knowing what Dee, kind of did at the end of this one. And it was still, Ro and the Leveler, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still very much swayed in Ro's favor by 89%. So it was a huge thing. But I think this book did a couple of good things did some really good things for Lourna Dee. I think it really gave you some perspective over where she came from. The issue I had with the writing and the acting, because I think these two kind of go together, mostly the writing, I think, is that she was not the same character we got in Rising Storm. It just did not feel like the same character in the now. All of the stuff preceding when she was younger and when she was getting, going through the military and getting burned and things like that, all of that I was totally fine with. We all changed, but the very reclusive and very,
Yeah.
the very conniving and that type of thing, that person was gone. And that bothered me a little bit. It took me a while. I listened to it again today at like 2x speed, which is always interesting. But I wanted to get through the entire thing again before we talked about it. And it was it was very difficult to get on board with that. This was the same Lourna Dee that we had that was just so ruthless. We got moments of it early on, but then quickly after that, when she was in prison, it was very much a different story. And all of a sudden she was seeing the good in people. And it just seemed very disconnected for me in that way. Now, that's not to say that the story wasn't really good. And I liked where it went. I liked where it ended up. And we got a little bit more of the Lourna Dee that we thought was already there. Now we've got really her coming out, and she really is, the Lourna Dee now, which I think was really good. Some of your comments about the sound effects, while they were good, they were too low a lot of times, like blaster fire. Like when you're going to execute someone, and I'm sorry, this is kind of crass, but if you're going to execute someone, it should be more impactful thing. But it sounded like the blaster was in the other room, and it was just kind of muffled, which just took away some of the impact. So that's more of a production quality thing.
Exactly.
But
it's more of a technical thing, right?
Right. But the voice acting, this is what you get with audio dramas, right? It's really over the top. We had the same type of feedback with Dooku Jedi Lost, which of course was also written by Cavan Scott, but there's a certain level to it. If you go back and listen to the original radio dramas of Star Wars back in, the 80s, the public radio, you get a lot of that still, even from the same characters. And then the first one, The New Hope, was really voiced by most of the original cast.
Yeah.
Right. So you still get that though, because they've got to make up for what you can't see. You've got to make up with what you hear and to give you that visual. But at the end, that's when you get some of your comments though of a lot of breath and a lot of or grunting and things like you don't really know what's going on, and then they got to tell you. And sometimes it pulls you out of it, like, "Oh, I've given you the blaster," type of thing. Even though
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you kind of heard him give him the blaster, but
yeah, exactly. I would agree. The thing where I fell with Lourna Dee not feeling like the same character. I'm with you to some extent on that because and I guess, and this is the question I asked you, and I don't know if you've slept on it anymore, or maybe this is a question if other people want to kind of chime in on, but I wonder if it was more about the way the character was being portrayed by the actress. Like, did they go in? I mean, I'm sure they had to have done their homework, right? I'm sure they went out and read the books. I hope they did, read the books that came prior to this, listened to the audio dramas as well, and how Thompson did some of the voices and all that. But it did feel out of character. She seemed more like, I don't want to say enthusiastic, but she had a lot more energy, right? She
Mhm.
didn't seem so reserved. Like it always felt like she was very reserved, kind of biding her time, not very vocal. And here she was just all out, like always in front and center. And she should be because she's the main character. But it just did feel like there was a little bit that was different. Now, if you want to argue, like, how do we argue that, or how do we defend that from a storyline perspective or a character background perspective? Well, maybe given the fact that she went through all of that and now she was no longer technically part of the Nihil, at least she didn't think she was going to be anymore. Maybe that was her finally seeing an opportunity to be outspoken and vocal. She wasn't that way around Markion Bro and Pan and Kazav and Zetar and all that. Maybe that's what we're seeing is because now they haven't been around. She's allowed to kind of be more of herself and who she is. I think what would be key here is going into the next wave of books. Does she continue on the same kind of a character type, right? If they're consistent from that perspective, I don't really have a big issue with it. I can write it off as that. I don't think, and I'm not saying that that's exactly what it was. I'm just trying to figure out how do you like justify that that disconnect a little bit there.
Agreed. So let's get into it a little bit. We can talk about some more specifics as we get through it.
Yeah. So for anybody that hasn't read or listened to the audiobook or the audio drama, again, of course, we're going to spoil this thing, but it's I was surprised. Number one, it takes place about 3 months after the events of Valo and the Rising Storm, which is fine. I mean, that's okay. No really feedback there. But I think the one thing that was kind of like out of the gate was like, oh, the Dren gear are gone. Like they even make a point to
Are
notate.
destroyed.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like they're done. And now we've discussed this when we were talking about the Rising Storm, so we don't need to get into that too much. But that I think for people that have not read the comics, may be like, wait a minute, they were talking about the Dren gear. We had one interaction in the Rising Storm, and apart from that, unless you've read the comics, like what happened to them? Like there is a lot of history that's now suddenly feels like it's missing. And to be fair, there is some, not all of it. Like some of it, even if you read the comics, you just kind of had to take it for grant or face value that this is where it was. But yeah, it was a pretty big change. And so I think this speaks to what we were talking about when we were talking about the Rising Storm and how fast some of this stuff seems to be moving now, and whether or not they're going to maybe lose some folks or shed some people off because they're unable to kind of keep up with what's going on. But and the way the book is structured, or the audio, I got to break myself from saying the book. The way the audio drama is structured, we get, for the most part, for the first 6 chapters parts, there is a flashback, and then there's also a present time, right? So you've got the present stuff story going on, and then it's got flashbacks. And this is similar to what we have with Dooku Lost, right?
Right.
We had that storyline with Ventress that was happening, and then she'd be flashing back, and we get more of what was going on in the background. So very similar formula, but when we get to the final 2 parts, it all kind of happens in present time. Let's just talk about the characters. It opens up in a bar with Pan-Eta and Andric. We'll talk about the present first. But I thought the guy that did Andric's voice, I thought he was great.
Oh, he was awesome. He was awesome. He had like this Australian type of accent.
Yeah. And he was really good, a good voice actor, or just good actor in general. We have the names down here, and I just didn't put them in, but I thought he did it really good. But it's so funny because he walks into this bar and he's sitting there bragging about how he used to be part of the Nihil, and he's talking to some guy. We find out that it's actually Pan-Eta who's been sitting there the entire time, listening to all of this. And so he's sitting there trying to, play it off like he has no idea what he's talking about. But yeah, he doesn't sound good. Like Pan-Eta from the Rising Storm, right? He was poisoned, and he barely got away. And fast forward, and now they don't really explain this until much later on in the audio drama. You don't hear it,
Right.
but he's got all kinds of tubes. He's on a ventilator. I mean, you think of somebody like a Darth Vader or somebody like a Saul Guerrera, just not. I mean, he's basically on life support, a mobile life support system, and barely getting by.
An in-house cocktail keeping him afloat.
Yep.
And really, he's only got two things in mind. He's kill Dee and kill Ro. Those are kind of the two main things that he's going. But yeah, this conversation, I really like this though, because Keller or Andrick really is really engaging. So this was a great start to it, and he gives a lot of the history. He starts to give us a lot of the history as to what happened after, and what set up the situation. So it was really cool getting to have his perspective on things as kind of a worker bee of sorts on the bridge of the Lourna Dee, and then when the Jedi come in a little bit later. But it was just really, really well acted. Like they were acting like they were drinking and things like that, and even those sounds that he was making were absolutely stellar. They were just, and they had this nice little like Hawaiian type of music in the
Yeah, right.
background.
Yeah.
It was, so every time you like flashback. So this is one of the things we had a problem with Duke of Jellicity, if you remember, was the switches between the past and present were very difficult to adjust to sometimes.
Hmm.
And this one didn't. It wasn't near as it was much more successful at it. I think there were a couple times, but this, when you had that music play, you're like, oh, okay, we're back in the present now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I'm not afraid. I'm not worried to tell I was afraid. I was scared. It was just all these things that he was saying. Was just
Right.
I wish I could do it. I can't.
Yeah. Well, no, I think we found our Tom Kane replacement. Congratulations. So when can you start?
Thank you, Albert.
You do a pretty good Tom Kane. I'll give you that. So going back to the key takeaway from this first interaction in part one is that this guy, Andrick, again, used to report up to Lourna Dee. He's still loyal to her, and he's got a locator. He knows how to find her, and he's looking for muscle to kind of he's trying to get a group together to go rescue her, save her in some way, right? So he just picked the wrong person to confide in Pan Eta. So
Right. It was interesting that he hadn't seen Pan before. He knew who.
Yeah,
Andrew knew
well-
who Pan was. Well, and so they kind of explained this later on.
did they?
though,
Because
right?
I had like, that's one of those things that's like a little nitpick, but I'm like, forget it. I don't really care. But I would think that as long as Pan Eta has been around,
So later on when they have the Asgar Row scenes,
yeah.
they talk about that they don't come together very often.
Mm.
And I think that's probably where you can get. Now, we have a very different perspective of that because they seem like they party all the time.
all the time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so again, this is kind of one of those disconnects of, how do you not know who the Tempest Runners are? Because, but I think some of it is maybe all the Tempests don't come together at the same time very often. But even still, I'm
Only
kinda
when they call a
questioning that.
rebel, right? Or so
Right. But how do you not know who the runners are?
I don't know. Well, even still, like he's a Doetin, so it's like he kind of stands out.
He stands
too,
out in a crowd.
right?
Yeah.
He's not a little guy, but all right. That's, again, I'm with you there. But okay, so that's kind of really the big takeaway from the past and in the first part, and then we get to the present, and this is where we get some really good stuff because Avar Chris is involved. But it's the Republic. We find out that Lourna Dee has decided to go ahead and attack this little small satellite station kind of thing over in what they call the Gallows system. And the Republic finds out. And so they're they're having this big debrief, and there's these two characters that they're kind of like the Biggs and Skywalker. Hey, good to see you. We're both here at the Academy kind of thing. But they ended up launching all of the vectors and long beams and anything else they can deploy, including Chris herself. They send out Skier, not Vernestra, Keeve. Yep.
Yeah. Sika and Buri's there.
Buriaga. So they send out, it's like everybody heads out automatically out there. And when they get there, they, of course, attack Lourna Dee's ship. And she's calling for help, trying to get out of there. She calls, of course, Marchion Ro calls her, which I thought was a great moment because she calls Marchion Ro. When he calls her, she's like super annoyed that he's calling her like in the midst of a battle, which is just more of her character that really shined for me.
Really? Now? I mean,
Right. Yeah. What
quoting,
she says.
actually.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why are you calling me like right now of all times? And so they're eventually, she's the Jedi are about to board. They were able to fire off like they were going to go into that space station like they normally do with the gas and all of that. And they do. Some of them are I guess the only few people that were left were kind of pinned behind a door waiting for this Nihil attack to come. And then you hear the lightsabers come on. Audibly, you hear the lightsabers come on, and they finally made it in there. And so they send the boarding party, which is Skier and Keeve. Yep. Buryaga. And I don't remember if Nib was in there or not, but
Yeah, it was
was
on
she?
there.
Okay, so all four of them are part of the Jedi boarding party. And I guess the big takeaway here is that she fakes her death. Like, she takes off her mask, she throws it on a droid, she tells everybody to get away. And I want to talk about this in a minute, because there are moments in this throughout all of this where she does feel like she's doing the right things and she's saying the right things and she's got a heart. And this was the very first moment for me, because she tells everybody to get out, to get to the escape pods and get away when she realizes that the Jedi it's over, right? She's gonna lose the Lourna Dee, and there's really no way of going back. Markian Rowe turns his back on her, of course, as we expect him to. So
Ride the storm, Lourna.
yeah, I mean, the way he said it, the way Thompson delivers that line is really, really sinister. So he was going to go ahead and get rid of him, or get rid of her, which kind of falls in line with his plans. Her saying, get away, find yourself. And then she went down. She was going to go down with the ship. So on one hand, I'm feeling like, okay, yes, she was saying I'm going to go down with the ship because she had a different plan to escape. But it seemed like that line was at least delivered sincerely of, get out of here. There's nothing else you can do, right? It wasn't like a Pan-Eta who just who constantly kills his own people left and right whenever, he pleases. So I just feel like she's got that heart in her. And I think that kind of goes back to, some of the flashbacks that we're going to get when she's much younger. But yeah, so that's kind of, there's a couple things in there we can touch on. If you want to pick them up, go ahead.
Yeah, but it was a bit disjointed there too, because Andric has this he puts Lourna on this pedestal because of all of that, and Andric's a cloud, and he gets promoted to Storm like right before they're supposed to die. Which
Yeah.
is, okay, thanks. And he thought it was the biggest honor in the world, of course, freaks. But anyway, the thing that was interesting though is that he views her as, she actually cares for her people, and Pan doesn't care anything. But like, literally in that same flashback sequence, Lourna like slaps Tasia for questioning her on the bridge and really giving her no quarter, and being that was more along the lines of the Lourna Dee I was expecting, right? Someone, while she might care for her Tempest, they don't speak up and they don't get out of turn, right? And they still are supposed to do their jobs. And
yeah,
so that was a little bit of
but Tasia deserves it.
Tasia does have a smart mouth.
I hate her. And I'm glad she's dead. Spoiler alert, but I hated her, and I didn't hate her as an act. I mean, I think we were meant to hate her, but I didn't like her at all. Like, she
annoyed me so much.
She does. She's a backstabbing, whatever. Like, the whole time.
We found Albert's pet peeve.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, she rubbed it in Lourna's face, and we'll get there. But yeah, she rubs some things in Lourna's face the entire time, which again, disconnect on Lourna's character. But we'll talk a little bit more of the situation that she was in. But yeah, the scene it was really good to have the Jedi come in there, and actually the Avar Kriss was very, very bold and very strong. And listening to Andric describe her, he's like, and there she was in flowing robes, and
Yeah,
all of the hair. And Pan's like, you were scared about hair,
Yeah.
And he's like, you have the Heru of Hetzal, and then just this aura that they've built around this character, is just so huge. And even their enemies, who are just crazy people, still are just in complete awe of who Avar Kriss is. But again, this is where, like, Keeve, I got to talk about the voice acting again. I'm sorry. Skier was freaking amazing.
Yeah.
He sounds exactly what you would expect Skier to sound like. He's absolutely perfect. But Keeve was just so flat. I mean, she was just so flat. I wanted to like Keeve so much.
Yeah, because she's got a lot of personality in the comics.
She does. She has so much personality, and she swears all the time. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love her. And then in this one, she was just, I mean, she had a little bit of it, but it just, the lines were just they just fell flat for me. And I was very disappointed in that, because I like Keeve quite a bit, and she's such a central part of the High Republic comics right now. And it's just so much fun. But
yeah, and she wasn't in it for very long. I mean, most of these, like Skier, her, Nib, Burry, they're in the first part 1 and part 2, and beyond that, they don't show up again. So,
what do you think about the Jedi and all of their, the Force is with me, the Force will provide? It was like very much chanting, and very cult-like.
Yeah, well, they've done it before. Like in the comics, there's been at least 2 instances that I can think of where it's happened. It
Right.
happened in Light of the Jedi, and I want to say it happened in The Rise of Skywalker. So I think they're being consistent. But yeah, I mean, it just speaks to me that of the Jedi during this era are very different. They're much more spiritually in tune. Even like when we talked about the Rising Storm, right? Elzar Mann goes absolutely crazy with the dark side, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll just head back to Jeddah. We'll do our penance, say our prayers, do our
Right.
rosary, whatever they do, and everything's going to be fine." And so they're just that in tune with it. And I think they're kind of, we get the same level of devotion that we see with what's his face from Rogue One. There, yeah, I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Cassian?
No, not Cassian. No,
Krennic? Oh, Chirrut.
Chirrut. Yeah,
I'm
thank
like on a
you.
completely different planet.
Yep, no, Chirrut.
Yeah. Krennic wasn't a
No,
crazy.
he wasn't a devout follower of the Force that I'm aware of, anyways. But yeah, so there were some other great moments in here. Like Skier, of course, gets mutilated. Like he seems to be like the punching bag. And there was Charles So wrote that, posted on Twitter not too long ago and said looking for different, or thinking about different ways to punish Skier. He just
Right.
seemed, because he can regenerate. I think it's kind of cool that we get to. I mean, now it doesn't ever feel like he's truly at risk now because he's been through a lot. And in this one, he takes, I think Lourna hits him in the gut or something with her axe
Through the
shoulder or
I
something.
think.
Yeah. I mean, it's enough they get him in a back. They have to put him in a back to tank, and he's not really happy about that later. But, right there, it does again explain how well she's able to fight. And we finally are going to get the backstory on that, because if you had not read this or not listened to this and read The Rising Storm, you were wondering how the heck she was able to go toe to toe with Stellan Gios. And we're going to get to that explanation here in just a minute. But long story short, Andric gets away in the escape pod. She fakes her death. They do capture her. I think I forget who puts her down ultimately. Maybe I'll just say it's Avar Kriss because I wanted.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they. It was probably Keeve and Skier and them.
Yeah, I forget now. It's not important. What is important is she's captured, and they don't realize that they've captured her. And to be clear, we forgot to fail to mention this, but earlier on, Avar Kriss, as they're kind of talking about it, they're having a conversation about the Nihil. They say and still think, as much is still in line with in the comics, still in line with the Rising Storm, that Lourna Dee is the Eye.
Right.
They've identified. They're pretty sure that she is the Eye. They still don't know anything about Marchion Ro, and now they've captured her, but they don't realize it's her because she's taken off again her helmet and gave it to this decoy droid that's now gone. And they think she booby trapped it. It blew up, and so from the Republic and Jedi's perspective, the Eye of the Storm is now no more. Right, that she's now dead, and so that kind of brings the close there to part one.
Right.
Okay. In part two, let's jump back over to the present. And here we get, so they've captured her. They're bringing her now into, I think it was Starlight Beacon or wherever it was, to kind of
process.
Processor. Yeah, that's essentially what it was.
Yeah,
Get her ready.
Med bay, heal up while they get ready to ship them out to wherever they're going to go. Yep.
Yeah, and they ask her what her name is, and this is where she comes up with one of the first names that she has, which she calls her herself Saul Crossed. And I don't know the spelling of it. And it's so funny. Somebody asked Cavan Scott on Twitter. He said, I think it's this, which is hilarious for him to say, I think it's this. But that just speaks to the editors kind of have the final say on a lot of the stuff, even though the writers did it. But when they're questioning her, they're almost kind of putting her through this interrogation. One of the things that really caught my ear was the fact that she said that her family were pathetic. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. As we get into the flashbacks, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because I don't know if she sincerely meant that, or do you think that was just her trying to be, put up a decoy again, or a defense of, I didn't like the family kind of thing.
Yeah, it sounded like a lot of bitterness still coming through when she doesn't necessarily feel that all the way. As we learn the story of it, it's not 100% true that that's how she feels, but
right.
There certainly seems to be a lot of bitterness still there, and a lot of conflicted feelings probably about it.
Yep. And that's it ends. I guess that again, the big key takeaway here is she is going to be sentenced to the Restitution, which is this floating ship, or it's not floating. It's a spaceship, right, essentially. And it's like a prison. It's a floating or sailing prison, if you will. And she's sentenced that for 10 years. and they're this is part of Lena So's initiative. So they don't really call it one of her great works, but she seems to be kind of one of the people that's driving it. And really, it's kind of a way to. It's a work release program at times. It's about rehabilitating criminals and putting them back on their feet. This all speaks to the "We Are the Republic," right? We are in this this era of I don't know, a social justice of sorts, right? Where they don't really penalize. The penal system isn't one that they go behead people or lock them up in jail. It's like, no, let's rehabilitate these people.
It's not as punitive, right?
Exactly. Let's show them that they are wanted, and we are all still unified, even though they've made some bad choices and done some maybe horrible things. And we'll get more into what that looks like here a little bit later. But this is the first time, and there's a number of these that happen in this audio drama where somebody's instilling faith in her and telling her, you don't have to be who you are. You can be somebody else, right? And this is really going to play up as we get to the very end of people showing her grace and favor, which it doesn't
and that was really
sits well with her sometimes.
It was difficult to hear that type of thing because I'm like, you're kidding me, right? These are the Nihil. They rape and they pillage and they destroy and they rip things apart and they salvage what's left and they just do it for fun, right? I mean, and then we've got this interrogator, and you got to put the finger quotes with an interrogator because it was more like a tell me your life story type of thing,
Yeah, she even says that. I think she makes a comment about it being kind of like her social worker or her psychiatrist.
And even on the restitution later, they talk about therapy. I mean, they literally the workers have therapists and the inmates have therapists and stuff. And I know some of that is real, that like those are real things, but it's so very weird to hear so many. I'm going to put faith in you. There's something about you. I can't put my finger on it. Whereas, it's that she's a Tempest Runner, and that your faith is, I don't understand where your faith is coming from.
She's responsible for millions, maybe not directly, but she is responsible for millions of people that have died. But they're going to give her another chance. So
right, okay. I will not get on that soapbox. Yeah. But yes, it was. But again, how I reconciled that, Albert, was I basically had to tell myself, like, okay, they think that she's a lowly peon that had a tough life and got sucked into this life of thing because she didn't have a better choice, right? There was no other opportunity, and this is their opportunity to save everybody.
Yes,
and to give them that second chance after 10 years of sweeping up stuff in the Outer Rim. But it's a So I had to kind of get there, but it was really difficult to disassociate Lourna Dee, who we know, and what she was trying to do. She was trying to kill the chancellor.
Right. Exactly.
With I think you're pretty all right. I'm going to give you a second. I got a good feeling about you. I think you're going to do good thing. I just know it.
And here's the salary.
That's right.
We're going to pay you too.
I'm going to put my neck out. Yeah, that's right. We're going to give you 3 credits a day to go be a better person.
Yeah.
It's going to be fantastic. It's all going to work out just fine.
So as
I want to know if that lady still has her job.
I know there should be a follow-up audio drama of just her being interrogated for making this horrible decision.
It's like the end of a documentary where they just flash, like a black and white picture,
right?
The words that tell you everything about where everybody's at now. I want to know where that lady is at.
Shortly after she was sentenced to the restitution for.
Right. Or she ended up being on some other space station the Nihil destroyed or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was dark. Sorry.
The irony. Okay, so as she's going through and interrogating her, counseling her, talking about, she asked her, of course, tell me about your past. And so we get some flashbacks now to her past. And so this is where one of the big eye opening moments for me, we find out that Lourna Dee is one of the Disney princesses. And I posted something earlier about this. She's the most recent Disney princess. Her background is she comes from I'm going to call it a royal family. I don't know, though. I don't really honestly don't know how the Twilight Society is set up and whether they have royals and all that. But it was enough that they referred to as a princess. So from that.
I think that was condescending, though.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was condescending.
We'll have to find out. No, it could be.
She was effective. I equated her to like Hera. So what Hera was on Ryloth, I equated it to a bit of the same type of position where you have a family that's maybe they're not rulers, they call them keepers.
The keepers, magistrates, sometimes.
They're kind of governors, right? So they're not de facto, whatever it is. But but anyway, she's heir to the throne type of thing. So I get why they would call her that, but I equated it more to like Hera, that she wasn't even first in line, so she was, you know,
Yeah, she's a little
had
bit
a
further down.
yeah, she had
Right.
a older sister and a younger brother. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very possible. I was kind of half joking about whether or not she was the new Disney princess, but they certainly treat her that way, even like, they're escorted in and they've got the lower people and they've got rules set up about if should there be an insurrection, here's what you need to do. Right. There's a lot
Right.
of things that kind of feel like they're in power, but then at the end of the day, they're on a colony out in the middle of nowhere. So, I mean, what power do they really wield other than coming up with money and giving that back out to Ryloth, and then which ultimately kind of filters all the way up to the Republic and paying their
Right.
taxes and all of that, right? So there's a lot of that in this as well. But getting back to the family, like you mentioned, they've got blurgs, so we got blurgs again in Star Wars, which is always good. She's got a sister named Helena, a brother named Einan.
Ina.
Yeah,
Ina.
Einan.
Yep.
I don't. It's always there's no. It wasn't even in the credits that I saw. Maybe it's somewhere else. I called him Einan, so excuse
Inan's
me.
right. Yep.
Okay. And then her father, which I didn't catch his name. I think they said it at one point, and I forgot to write it down. But
I think they just called him Keeper.
sure, Dad. But
Yeah.
no mother, no mention of the mother. And so I thought, well, maybe but there's a part of all of this where you get to the end of the book and you feel like, I really like her. There was a good person really deep down inside. Not, maybe not that even deep down inside. It just depends on who she's talking to.
Mhm.
Could she be redeemed? And then you have to go down a path of like, who the heck is going to redeem her by the end of this book? But there's like two people. There's a character we'll talk about here in a little bit that she meets in the prison, and then there's maybe her mother. Like, I guess where I was going with that is, did we ever hear whether or not her mother was gone? Like, they never mention her at all. So,
Yeah.
is she still around?
No, I don't remember anything being mentioned about her mom at
Yeah.
all. And I do like the idea of a Disney princess that wants to sell spice and glitter stem. I mean, that's a pretty bold move there,
It's
Disney.
pretty forward. Yeah.
Yeah, we are really
Progressive.
stepping out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So,
And so that's the rub, right? So this is where we start to find the rub is that their colony is not doing well.
no.
The people are near rioting, they're revolting, and this first family of sorts, are the ones getting the blame for it. And it's difficult to tell because Lorna makes it sound like they're not doing anything and they're naive, but then they're like, we are doing things, they're just not working, I guess. And so there's this disconnect of what is it, like idealism that Lorna has, and where she has other compatriots that are kind of influencing this a bit because they're like, well, we're pretty sure we've got what is it, Rill? They've got Rill there, and
Mhm.
then later on they'll find that they've actually got this spider silk that's basically pure glitter stem, and these things are highly marketable, right? And there's concerns already that Ryloth is getting in with the Zygerians again, which of course we've heard about with Bad Batch, and we've seen before with slave traders. There we go. Words.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're getting this very dissonant type of thing going on, and of course she's got a boyfriend named Bala.
Bala.
That right, and so he's this influencer, right, on her part. He seems a little bit maybe older or a little more mature than her as well. I'll use mature lightly, but he seems a bit older though, and so he's very much influencing, what she what she's thinking of what's best for Ryloth, and they feel like they're on the same page, right, of being a bit more progressive with what they will do in order to bring prosperity back to the colony.
Yeah.
I said Ryloth, but what was the actual? Oh
Yeah. It wasn't
gosh,
Ryloth. Bob Saget. Don't know. I don't remember the
yeah,
name.
I can't remember. Anyway, the other colony near Ryloth ish.
Yeah. And the key, I guess one of the important pieces of Bala is I guess they used to know each other. He left, he became a spice runner. The family knows, like her dad and sister all both know Bala, and he's not seen in a favorable light because he's gone off and he's doing sketchy things where, like you said, they're trying to stick to the tried and true. This is what works. We just got to earn our honest living, even though at the expense of the people who are suffering and they're poor and hungry. They've got all those real world problems, and yet they're sitting on this gold mine of spice. And so this is where that disconnect comes, the conflict comes. And once Bala finds out, and it's not important how he does, he finds out, he tells Lourna Dee, look, your dad's not doing the right things. Here's what we're going to do. The plan is we'll put you in power. We'll keep your family safe. Lock him up. We'll put you in power, give you'll be heir to the throne at this point. And then we'll start mining the crap out of this spice and make tons and tons of money and get this colony back up where it needs to be. that's the plan. She goes along with it, of course, because she's in love. And, the insurrection comes where the people revolt. The family gets locked up. This is very Anastasia, by the way. If you've ever watched or read the book, Anastasia, where the royal family gets locked up and then later murdered. Same thing happening here. But they come in, and this is where, once they've come into where the family's in their little safe house kind of area or safe room, escape room, Lourna was the one that she actually unlocked it and allowed Bala and even the guards, I guess the highest was the royal guards or whatever, were turned against her father at this point. And he didn't keep his word. Bala actually goes and takes over. He becomes the leader of all of this. And then he gives Lourna Dee away to be a slave, basically sells her off to be a slave, and then kills her entire family. I mean, you don't hear it, you don't say it, but the guards go in with blaster bolts or blasters, and the doors close, and the family's, I would assume, is dead, right? I mean,
I think we may have heard blaster fire on that one.
Okay. Yeah. So not only was, she double crossed by somebody that she put all her trust and faith into, and this is a reoccurring theme with her. This is just another one of these things where, later on she talks about wearing all these different masks, and now the symbolism of the mask with Lourna Dee has a different meaning and connotation after listening to this. But she talks about wearing all these different masks because she's constantly putting her faith in people, trying to be somebody else something that somebody wants her to be. Right. This is Bala's the first one. He wants her to be this. And then she gets let down. She gets betrayed in probably the most horrible way, because not only is she sold into slavery, but her family, who she didn't really care for the most part, with the exception of her brother, Einan. Like, she had a really good relationship with him. Didn't really care so much about her father and her sister. They seemed like they were always at odds. So, screw them.
She never wanted them harmed, though. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. She didn't want them dead.
She thought they were going to go off to the retreat on the moon, which didn't sound like a paradise, but she thought they were just going to go and retire, basically. You guys leave. I'll take care of it. We'll fix it. And you guys just, take the back seat and just disappear. Yeah, She did not want this to happen, though. So she was very much betrayed. And it being sold to slavery, she kept trying to, say that she was who she was. And, of course, who she was and her name. And there's another theme throughout it. Her name didn't mean anything either. Right. And so she constantly had to start reinventing herself. And this was just the first time where she had to start taking a different look at who she was. And it was a pretty painful journey to get there.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of part 2. So part 3 is Restitution, named after, obviously, the floating space station there, or prison. Excuse me. And so we'll jump back to the present, where Lourna, Tasia, and then she meets somebody that was part of her storm, part of her group, her Tempest.
A cloud, right?
Yeah, she was a cloud, I think, at the time, named Quinn. And they're all on this together. We're introduced to two characters named two counselors who are kind of like counselors, but they're also kind of like security guards. And I think in Lourna Dee and a lot of the prisoners' eyes, they are more of a security guard, but they do come across, well, maybe not Fry. She's kind of a jerk.
I think Fry was mostly like lead of security. Yeah.
Right.
Wittick was like the what do they call him? The warden, effectively, it sounded like.
Yeah. Right. He was kind of like the higher up, but he seemed like a very compassionate person. It seemed like and I say seem because there's a twist to all of this, but he does come across as a very likable character earlier on as you're listening to this. You like him. He seems compassionate. He seems like he really believes in the system, and eventually does confide and believes in Lourna Dee to a really high point here later. But they kind of go over what their role on the Restitution is, or what's going to happen to them as they are prisoners. And like we mentioned, they're going to get a pay. They get like 3 credits per day. You have an opportunity to earn more depending on things that are what's going on.
Go down to the commissary and buy some furniture and some other treats. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a video game. Like you get these you can start, putting stuff in your room and building it out however you want to.
When do we get the pop-up ad for buying more credits?
Yeah. The achievement unlocks. And then they also provide training. They're going to give them training on different skills and, again, rehabilitate them. But their whole mission, really, as they're on the Restitution, is they are going to be traveling around throughout the galaxy and going to areas where they've been affected by war, humanitarian efforts, that kind of thing. So they're going to work and doing things, but they're not out breaking bricks and they're not making license plates. They're actually going out and helping people and rebuild cities and stuff. And you got to know when that happened, you're thinking, okay, at some point they're going to cross paths with the Nihil because they're running around just doing all kinds of nefarious things right now in the galaxy.
Right.
And then we meet a very important character, arguably one of the more important characters, and that's Seston, who's a fellow Twi'lek. She was imprisoned there. I think she was working for a company that was embezzling money. Things got out of hand. I think she accidentally killed somebody. She doesn't have a mean bone in her body. At least we don't have any reason to believe that. But yeah, she was imprisoned here, but she has kids as well. And she hasn't seen her boys in a very long time. And this all really plays and pulls at Lourna Dee's heartstrings to a great extent there.
I wasn't expecting that from her, where she would have some sort of sentimental, I don't know, view of children for whatever reason. And actually, they were not the first either that had this type. Quinn later on has the same type of reaction. Oh, you have kids. That was a great picture. Like, you Nihil are the nicest people ever. You're like great people. I want to join too. They should make some propaganda.
They're just misunderstood, Jonesy.
That's right. All. They are. They just need to be rehabilitated on the Restitution. They just need someone to believe in them.
Well, if you think about Lourna Dee, though, like if she didn't have a mother growing up, and maybe this is her first exposure, right? If they've been on this colony for so long and they were royals and so they weren't running around with the regular people, and she didn't have a mother in her life, seeing somebody like her and the way she thought about her kids and loved her kids and wanted to be back with her kids. I mean, Lourna Dee never saw that, never had that. That may have been one of the reasons why she was so apt to open up and, trust her and take care of her and be, put her in front of Lourna Dee. Like, Lourna doesn't do that very often. Very rarely has she ever put somebody else in front of her. And I don't mean literally, because she's done that to be shot and killed, but put somebody in front of her to, thinking about somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. In that way, being selfless in that way. But she does it quite often with, what's her name?
Seston, right?
Seston, yeah.
Yeah, and Seston's a little bit older too, and it shows he's been in there a long time. I think, like when you were giving a little bit of backstory, she started siphoning off funds. She got a little greedy, and then it did sound like she did kill someone. And I don't know if it was an accident. I mean, she seemed like she kind of regretted that part, but really, she was just in it for money. She had a gambling habit. She got in with the wrong people, and then she had to make a regrettable decision, basically.
Right.
But also on the Restitution, we get, of course, then you always have a ringleader of all the gang, basically, of what's going in there. We got Ola Hest, right, who has this kind of southern drawl to her, calls everyone.
Does.
What does she call everybody?
Hun?
Yeah. Hun? Yeah, it's like going through a drive-through around here.
Yep.
So, but she's got these.
It's the same lady giving you Chick-fil-A or serving you Chick-fil-A there.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure, son.
No, that's not that. That's more like Waterbury. Anyway, so Ola Hess kind of runs the show around there, and she's like this crime boss, and no one wants to mess with her. Seston's trying to give her a little of that advice, like, look, she's the one you want to avoid, but of course, Lourna Dee's crew is the first one. That's who they piss off first, basically, pretty soon. But it's just, Tasia. Well, so as we're going through this, though, something we have to kind of go back to. Tasia is really leaning hard on Lourna, because she keeps saying Sal, and she's basically blackmailing her at this point. That when they come into the Restitution and they start to go into the main area, they see that there are a bunch of Nihil there, and they know who she is. And they know that if that was to get around very quickly, well, I guess they don't know who she is.
Yeah, they don't know who she is, but Tasia knows
the mask.
Yeah.
But if they were to tell the people there, it was unclear, because they said they wouldn't react very positively to that. But I think that was maybe because it was Pan's Tempest that were in there.
Probably, or they would just turn her in, knowing that they get a free, get out of jail card by turning her over to the Republic, because the Republic is after her. They would be after. They would want her, knowing that she was still alive, because they think you presume that she's dead at this point.
Right. There's still a reward for information about Lourna Dee, but of course, since she's dead, if they were to find that she was alive, we later have someone that's, of course, a bit greedy, starts working our way through that. But yeah, so Tasia, steals a a comm link or a comm device and pisses Hest off and her cronies, and basically creates a giant fight.
Yep. Yeah. Then and that's kind of how it ends. There's a huge fight that breaks out. Lorna, of course, is in the middle of it all. The one thing I'll say about Hest that was interesting is that even in the midst of this like really cool idea concept, of humanitarian type people that are former prisoners that have been rehabilitated, you still have corruption that's
Mhm.
happening. And they didn't really get into this, but I just, Wittig was aware of it. They seemed to like be turning blind eye and deaf ears at all times whenever this was going on. But you got to imagine throughout the entire audio drama, she is in the know. She wields a lot of power. She kind of has free reign to kind of do whatever she wants. She's got these cronies that are always with her.
She's got the
Um,
guards in her pocket, or at least some
yeah,
of them. Yeah.
exactly. And she has ways of getting out, or maybe not getting out, but she has contact to the outside world as well, too, right? So it's traditional in that sense. You've got somebody who's on the inside that's like this mob boss that's still running things. You very much get that similar vibe from her, only with the, as Tuan said, the Waffle House accent. So if you could imagine that down south, that's exactly what you get. So this all plays is going to play into it a little bit here in greater detail. But so that's the present. We flip back to the past. There's not a lot that happens here. Not a lot worth pulling away, but the key takeaways are she's caged up. She's being sold to. She's with the Zagarians, and I think they're about to sell her off to the Hutts. Um,
Right.
was it
Yeah. It was the
Godula?
Hutts.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember that they called out. They called one of them, and of course she's there's one human in there that she's kind of protective of, and I forget her name now. But at some point, as they are being kind of carried around and being prepped and being readied to be sold to the Hutts, the Jedi show up. And by the Jedi, there's a Jedi named Dal, who I don't think we've met yet, and I don't see him anywhere else. I may have the name wrong, but I heard Dal. But then Oppo Rancisis, who we know is around during this time, and who obviously is around during the prequel trilogy.
Got the greatest curls in the Republic.
He does. Very, very long time to get ready in the morning. But they rescue them. And so this is her first interaction with Jedi. This is her first that we know of. And I mean, I don't think she had any kind of previous interaction, but
Right.
she's taken back by how willing the Jedi are or how selfless the Jedi are and how much they care about her. And there's some really, really great moments in here where Oppo Rancisis is talking to her and telling her about, he senses the conflict in her. He can feel that there's a lot of conflict there. She's impressed with Dal. Dal, instead of going and taking the thing off with his hands, he takes the little, what is it? The collar.
Caller with great effort. It sounded
Yeah.
like.
With using the force. And so she gets a sense that like these people really care about me. They really want the best for me, which we've come to know that is the case with the Jedi during this era, as probably with all Jedi, but maybe more here. And
Most of them mean well, right?
yeah, they mean well. They are definitely all part of the we are the Republic and for light and life kind of thing. But the key where she at what the last question that's asked of her is like, where do you want to go? Like, where can we take you? Like, where do you need to be? And she doesn't want to go she doesn't want to go to Ryloth. And then it just kind of ends on that note. And we'll find out here in a little bit, of course, where she goes. But yeah, the fact that she met them, I'm just wondering at some point whether or not this is going to come back up. Right? Is she going to meet Oppo Rancisis again? What is that going to be like? Is this going to be like a Chewbacca and Ben Solo moment where they had this, because there were I'm kind of glossing over some of the interactions, but they were very sincere interactions. And he of course is, he's on the council, right? So he's a pretty darn good Jedi. But that would be interesting to see if later on, if they did pop up, or he senses her or sees her and like immediately through the Force is able to recognize her, even though a lot of time has passed and things have gone on. But what that would do and what that would change for her or him.
Right. His approach to Lorna was very much a scared child of sorts of wanting to take care and say, it's okay. We can figure something out. It was very much like it kind of reminded me of Lando at the end of Rise of Skywalker with Janna. Where are you from? And she doesn't know. And let's find out type of thing. And Oppo Rancisis were very much like that too. Of all right, well, we'll figure it out together then, and we'll and she had a very positive relationship with him. It sounded like she referred to him as Master Rancisis. They seemed to have a bit of a friendship because even where later on they seemed to keep in communication.
Yeah, he was checking in on her to see how she was doing, making sure she was on the straight,
right.
straight
Like
and narrow path.
she was his pet project of sorts, right?
Well, true.
With the normies, he had to keep one like a pet. And again, we kind of see this theme going on about everybody wants to make Lourna a project, and they have all these things they want her to be. And is it Lourna that wants to be that, or is it Lourna doing what others want, for their own gain, and she's at her expense of sorts.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's we'll cut back over so we'll go to part 4, which is called recrimination. Which, spoiler alert, she's going to be doing some bad stuff here. And Dee is now back and recovering. So after the big brawl, she's kind of recovering. Didn't she have something broken, like a broken leg or something?
Yeah, she had broken leg with the blurg when she was like when they were still on their.
No, I meant after the fight though. Like she wakes up in the infirmary, and I could have sworn there was something broken, but maybe not. Maybe she just beat up after the big battle.
Yeah, I think it was still the leg. And of course, we didn't really get into where she uses someone as a shield.
Yeah, but, well, I made the comment, but yeah, it's in there.
Yeah, so she's not. Well, she was surviving, but she really manipulated this other girl and used her for a shield.
Yeah,
which was
kind of
little off-putting. Yeah.
Yep.
Bad Lourna.
But here we start to get a relationship that begins to bud between Whittick and Lourna Dee. So again, Whittick is that warden, if you will, the head counselor almost. And he seems to be coming across as somebody who really wants the best for Lourna. More than just that, like there seems to be some affection that's going on, which how you can kiss somebody with those teeth. I don't know. I really don't.
Well, I'm trying to kiss.
Well, I know they never kiss, but he's thinking about it, I guess. I don't know. So I don't want to cut it.
He does seem to be interested.
He is definitely interested in her.
He's intrigued.
And I think she's definitely interested in him, but she's not used to that and can't understand for the life of her why anybody would want anything to do with her. Right? She gets her teeth completely filed down to be sharp. She's not looking to hook up with anybody, right? She's fine with who she is and wants to feel comfortable with who she is. And yet she's still feeling like this person's coming at her and has feelings for her. So this is very disorienting for Lourna Dee in a lot of different ways. But eventually she gets out. She makes her way back to K Block, which is where they're at. And not that that's important, but now she's got to watch her back. She's got Hess after her constantly at this point. They go ahead and they assign her to her first job. And so this is where we start to get some of the background on Lourna Dee's skills, right? She was assigned to, was it repairs, like ship repairs and like just repairs in general. So she picks up all these valuable skills as part of that, as part of her service on the Restitution. And later on, when they go down to their first, well, it wasn't their first one, but they went down to they were going to go down to this planet for like 5 days. The Nihil, of course, had been there, and they were going to go down and help kind of rebuild this whole facility that was taken down, or the village or whatever it was.
Right.
And that's where Lourna gets trapped by some heavy equipment. And Seston, who was the one girl that had the 2 kids and the Twi'lek, is with her. She runs off to go find some help. And out of nowhere, what seems like out of nowhere, Pan Eta finally shows up. So he catches up with her at this point. And there's a great line there where, he tells her, she says, I can't breathe because she's pinned down by this machinery. And he says that makes 2 of us, right? Because he's been suffering this entire time. So there's a lot that we probably skipped over, but those are the big pieces there.
Yeah, and I think the only part that's maybe relevant is that the person who's in charge of the work on the planet is someone that she knows from her previous life, which is going to take us back to the flashback in the past, because of course, somebody resurfacing like they always seem to, where, so basically what happens. So the option that Oppo Rancisis, gives to Lourna or kind of presents to her is that she can go to a military academy. And I don't really understand why she was very confused too. Like, why would a Jedi send me to a military academy? And why do you think that was? Just for?
Well, because he said,
I didn't quite understand why.
So when he was talking about the conflict, and I think I can't remember the wording he used, but felt like it's kind of like when you've got a troubled teenager and they send them off to military school, right? They lack the personal discipline. They need leadership. They need, a set schedule, right? All that stuff. to keep them occupied and just keep them and to feel like I can do something, right? They get to this
Right.
point where they're just so beat down that things are going horribly. And I think that was his thinking there was, I'll send her to this academy. She'll learn great skills. She'll feel like she's part of a group. She has a lot of potential to do a lot of great things. And she does, which I won't take your thunder because now you're talking about it. But I think that's where he was coming from is, there were probably a lot of different things that he could have recommended, but for whatever reason felt like this was the right one, which plays out really well for her because this is how, that explains, how she's able to hold her own in battles,
Right.
whether it's Stellan Gios or Skier or whoever she's fighting, or she's beating the crap out of everybody left and right. It's because, she served a lot of time on this military academy.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for why she's been so successful in the Nihil as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So up to this point, she didn't never gave a name to Opera Princesses, so she had to give them a name to register her in the military academy. So she called herself Einan, for her brother,
Yeah.
and we're led to believe that she's a bit maybe I don't know if I want to say lazy, but she's not excelling early on until she's really challenged by some of the older cadets and the more senior cadets. And then she just starts really excelling in everything, especially in mechanical skills and repairing ships and piloting and flying and things like that. So she basically can fix anything
Mm-hmm.
is what we find out, and sabotage and do some light slicing apparently as well, as we'll find out in a bit. But it's she's doing well, and even Opera Rancis calls her up in one of their little check-ins, as he's about to be out of communication for a while in a different world. But the problem she has is with the chain of command leadership and respecting you know, being told what to do. Again, kind of keeps resurfacing for her that she wants a certain amount of freedom, and I think she's content doing what she's doing. I think she started to enjoy it, but she hated being kept down, and that somebody would want to, like one of the other officers, one that ends up coming back a little bit later, of course, basically wants her to give him something that she has to fix a ship, right? A spanner or something like that. And she's like, why? And then she eventually gives it to him, and it's dirty. It's covered in engine oil or something. They like want her to clean it off in her shirt. It's just it's demoralizing, it's demeaning, and
Mm-hmm.
she's not going to take that crap. And
Hazing.
so
Yeah.
she's like, okay, fine. And she takes it and she whacks him over the head. And I don't know whether she meant to try to kill him or
Yeah.
she just did it out of frustration and anger. But they believed that he was dead. Of course, he's not. She believed that he was dead. So she jumps and takes a ship and starts to jet out without any kind of plan. But
Yep.
this was a really pivotal moment, because you're right. This is where she built a lot of those skills. That's survival skills and mechanical skills, things that were going to serve her really, really well. We're not really sure how long she was at the academy for, but I'm presuming 6 months to a year, maybe something along those lines, if that long.
I don't recall. I know. No, I don't know. I can't remember if they gave us a time frame on how
I
long
don't
that
think
had
they
been.
did. It's just we had to kind of piece it together based on Rancis's. Sounds like he's been checking in a little bit over
Yeah.
time, and she's clearly excelled in a bunch of different areas, so she had to learn some of that. But
Yep. Yeah, and I took it as it was not like she just had a bad temper and she lashed out. She had enough, like you said, and I don't think she meant to kill this person. I think she was really trying to hurt him, and I think maybe she went too far. But the fact that she ran off scared probably says that she was either way, she probably would run off scared.
I don't know if she was that scared. She was hooping and hollering and having a pretty good time there.
Well, at the very end, yeah, she sabotages all the ships so that nobody can take off after her, and she leaves. And basically, her last departing line is, "No one's ever going to tell me what to do again." Well, that doesn't really pan out because it's going to happen, no pun intended, a little bit later. But yeah, this was again another where people wanted her to be someone that she felt like she wasn't, and she had finally had enough and got what she needed and got out of Dodge. And so that's kind of where part 4 ends. The next one, part 5, is Revenge. These are all letter R words,
right?
If you had not picked up. Revenge. We'll go to the present time. So we find out Tasia is actually called Pan. So again, Tasia has been a jerk to her the entire time, has been hovering, like holding the fact that she knows who she is in real life above her head at any moment. They've never had a really good relationship. And so, of course, this little weasel calls Pan, finds a way to get a hold of Pan. And that's how
Link.
Yeah, that's how Pan finds his way here to that planet they're on. She fakes her death while she's kind of pinned down, and she is not feeling very good because she's got this big machine around her. And Pan's sitting there and talking to her and toying with her and making fun of her, how ironic that she's there and all that stuff. And eventually
he wants to take her to Ro so he could kill her in front of Ro and then kill Ro.
Yeah. Right. So she decides to fake her death. And
I want to know how she faked her death. She basically just was like,
that's what I think. I think she just kind of passed out. I mean, it's maybe I can't remember if it said that she faked her death, but it was enough that Pan was like, okay, gets her out. He basically uses his rage. Yeah.
Well, he went into a rage because he's like, I am not going to be cheated. You will not die unless it's by my hand. You are not allowed to. And so it worked.
Yep.
She used Pan's simple-mindedness to her benefit.
So, yeah, and he ends up killing Tasia. Well, he thinks he does. He beats the crap out of her. I think she's still around a little bit later. She's in the infirmary.
Right.
But Pan hates it throughout all of this. I mean, he's just killing everybody. Like, he really doesn't care anymore. He was never like a great
our pal Andric. We never even said, that we talked up Andric Keller so much. And so Pan got everything he needed to know and then shot the poor dude.
And then shot the bartender.
And the droid. It was a droid.
What did he do?
I know. The droid was kind of cool.
He was kind of cool.
I'm pissed at you, Pan.
So, but yeah, he's just going around killing everybody. She ends up stabbing Pan. She stabs Pan as
from the Midwest.
Yeah, I'm from the Midwest actually. Pulls him out. He pulls Lourna Dee out. She stabs him, and I mean, this guy just won't freaking die. Like, he's sitting there, and then Sexton finally shows up to kind of save her. Where she ran off to go find help. She comes back and she pushes him off at this. Off into a logging pit with like some machinery, like hits him and sends him over the edge. And you think, okay, he's gone. Of course, he's not. He's like the Darth Maul, the cockroach of the High Republic era.
Better see the body, otherwise
they'll always be back.
Right, and this is where we get the idea of that Pan is loaded up with tubes and everything else coming out of him that's basically on life support.
Yep. Was this the moment where she was pulling the tubes out?
Yeah, she was cutting them and.
Yeah, I mean, he's sitting there bleeding out. Yeah, and she was torturing him by pulling all those things out, and he was getting harder and harder for him to breathe. And I thought this is where, like, what's his face? Thompson did a great job. You just feel it. Like, it was stressful to hear. Like, it was brutal the way it was portrayed.
Yeah, and I think the idea was, he fell into this thing to be buried alive, I think was the intent. Because he fell into this hole or pushed into the hole, whatever it was, or something. And then all these logs or dirt and everything was, I think, were supposed to fall on him.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. It wasn't totally clear, but.
Well, yeah. I mean, he probably stayed alive for, I'm going to guess, through like stims or whatever else, something to just kind of keep him going for one more day. But I think they actually went to go back to look for the body, and it was gone, if I remember that correctly.
Yep. That's right.
So he lives. We know he's still out there. And it ends this, at least the present piece of it ends with, again, more relationship building between Widdick and her. And he's confiding in her, and he's starting to really push her to kind of like, I know there's something about you that you're not telling me. There's, you can talk to me. You need to just let it all out, kind of thing. And she's really struggling with it. I mean, I think there's definitely moments where she feels like she really wants to tell him, I'm Lourna Dee. And I don't, I want to be who I am and all that. She never does. I mean, at least not now. She doesn't give into it.
Right.
Okay. So we get back to the past. This is a really great moment. I think one of the cool things. So she's from in the past now. She had left the academy, and so now she's got all these skill sets. She goes back. I think it's her home planet, wasn't it? That she goes back to, or maybe it was just some random planet in that area.
Some random planet.
Okay. She goes back and she takes a job, basically fighting in bars for money. And she's wearing a Mando helmet, which brings up all kinds of questions about where the heck did she get that Mando helmet? But it was a nice little touch. But I love the imagery of her looking like she does now, but only with a Mandalorian helmet on. And all of a sudden, like, who should walk in? And this is where I felt like, okay, she's got to be somewhere close, because it just feels too random chance that her old buddy Bala, that lover that she had way back in the first couple chapters, walks into this bar. And of course, she's got the helmet on, so she sees him. He doesn't recognize her, although he recognizes the voice. He says that, but
right.
He's thinking.
And the bartender gave her some advice that her Leku were hanging out behind. I guess she was wearing a hood. Excuse me, a hood. but it wasn't covering all the way. So I think she had drawn it back up. So I don't think he knew that she was a Twi'lek either.
Yeah. No, good point. And he's now going around. What he's doing is he's trying to find somebody to stop the Nihil. So they've got this lucrative spice mine business going, but they're getting hit by the Nihil who are coming in and, taking over their ships and stealing their spice and taking over whatever else they want, whatever, they plunder and steal from. And so he's looking for some muscle. And of course he sees her and she's holding her own and winning these battles. And so he hires her. Of all people, he hires her to go aboard a ship and be basically his bodyguard, his defense for the Nihil should they attack.
Right.
And of course, this happens. There is a ship that is they're on a ship. The storm comes in, and she fights all of them off. And it's a really good. I mean, we don't have the time to get into it, but I love the fact that she was just one step ahead of all of them every single time, even though they were deploying the same tactics that they had used. She's just that smart, much smarter than them, and she's better at hand-to-hand combat and all that. And she eventually fends all of them off, with the exception of Pan, who boards the ship. And skip ahead here. Oh, I'm getting stuff screwed up here. Is this the moment where Pan invites her to join, or is that later?
I think that's later on.
Okay, sorry, I probably jumped ahead.
She actually basically sets up the scenario to be boarded by the Nihil later on.
Yep.
Yeah. This is one where she's just truly helping Bala out. And really just toying with him.
Really, and she takes the ship, and this is the first ship the ship that she ends up taking from this storm is what becomes the Lourna Dee, and she names it the Lourna Dee. And she mentions that that the reason she names it, because I know this is a question that came up from the very first from Light of the Jedi, is why she named her ship Lourna Dee. It's because for her, that was a name that it was taken from her. Right? She's had to live all of these lives, to have all these different names to just survive, wear different proverbial masks at times. And the one thing she has never truly been able to do, what was taken from her, was the Lourna Dee. And this is the first time she utters that word, the phrase, and don't you forget it, which is how the book ends, or this audio drama ends. But this is the first time that she says it. She wants everybody to know that name because she's never had a chance to really be that person.
Right. It's very much her for the first time reclaiming what she felt is hers, and what better way to do it than to stamp it on the side of your boat or your ship, right? We see a lot of people do this, but it's just the first time she's finally finding herself a bit and having that confidence of who she is, and that she can break free of all the things that have happened in the past. And Bala is absolutely terrified when he sees who it is. I mean, the fear in his voice is like, he just knows that he's in for it, because there's just no way that A, she survived, and then B, that she's right in front of him and seems to be exceptionally skilled and probably very okay with killing him.
Yeah.
Which, of course.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please. Yeah, she definitely obliges.
So this was the moment. Yeah, I don't have it in the show notes, but it was the moment that when Pan sees that she was able to defend it, he takes her in under his Tempest and brings her in and says, look, I need, I'm going to make you an offer here. And when they go back to Bala, not only do they kill Bala, but Lourna volunteers to run all of the spice. So they're going to make all this money that's going to feed into Pan, which is, is going to move her up in the ranks, if you will, with the storm. And so this is how she finds her way into the Nihil. They've recruited her. Essentially, they've recruited her now, and she's I can't remember what rank she has at this point, but she has a ship, and I think she's a storm at this point. So, and we'll come back to that in a little bit here, because from there we're going to get into the Asgard Rose stuff in just a minute. So that's the end of what was that, part 5? Oh man, I can't even keep up with this stuff now. That's the end of part 5. Part 6 is Renewal, and we'll start with the present. And this is, again, Lourna is still struggling with the fact that Wittig is out there trying to help her. She feels like she can't really trust him. She's in therapy, like you mentioned earlier. They put all the prisoners or workers or whatever through therapy. She's trying to be rehabilitated, and she's feeling like she wants to be a new person. She wants to be free of the past. And it's the part of this, like in that review that I said, there's so many moments in this audio drama where you start pulling for her, and then she does something stupid or regresses. And sometimes it's her fault. Sometimes it's not. I get that. I mean, I don't want to say she's completely on her own free will. She is the victim at times, many times, but it's just this constant struggle where the entire time, I think like I'm on a first name basis. Cavan Scott does a really good job of like really making you want her to finally go over and believe that she's going to cross over into the light, which she doesn't. But I love that. I love the fact that he was kind of building that up. And there's definitely a lot of these moments when she's talking with Whittick that you start to get that sense there.
Right. And again, you get Lourna starts to change a bit here too, because when Quinn is attacked, Lourna goes to defend her, and this is against Hest and her cronies again. And Lourna takes care of business. I mean, she roughs them up. And what she notices after this, though, is that everybody now is basically Hest's power has been severely diminished at this point. And now people are starting to look more towards Lourna. And Lourna starts to get ambitious and she starts to tell Whittick, we can actually make this happen. Like all the things that Whittick wants to do, and he keeps telling her that, she's his last hope and things like that, or her last chance to do something, truly unique. And she doesn't quite understand what that means yet, but it's very much now she's got the ambition, like, hey, we can do this. We can really make this a thing. We can finally, bring something good to the galaxy and reform these people. And I think, again, this is one of those times where it's a disconnect of who is Lourna Dee? I mean, is she someone who is ruthless and cunning and will slit your throat, will backhand you if you talk her? Or is she this person who wants to, secretly she loves the galaxy? She says at one point in the audio drama.
Yeah.
I think it was mostly from a point of, it gives me everything I want.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything I need. But, does she truly care, or does she just want to belong in some regard to something and have meaning? And I started to get more in the line of thought that she really just wants meaning in her life in some ways of, this is who I am. I can be who I want to be, but I can also do good, or I can do something. I don't know if it has to necessarily be good, but I can do something that seems productive at the same time, as long as it's what she wants to do and is not something that she's being either
Forced
told to do
Yeah.
or being coerced, I think is what we're going to find out here, right?
Yeah. And that, there's a really hard moment for her where Quinn is, again, one of the people that served under her, was under part of her Tempest at one point. And she gets attacked, and Lourna retaliates and beats up Hest and her goons and that sort of thing. But then Hest comes back to retaliate yet again. This just keeps going back and forth, and it's escalating. Right. But Hest then tells Seston, so the woman, the Twi'lek that's got the two boys, she tells her that, look, if you don't go out and kill, was it Tasia, I think, I'm going to kill your boys. And of course, Lourna finds out about this, and she knows that and Seston feels like, okay, I don't really have a choice here. I'm going to have to do what she does. And they're in the infirmary. So I think she ends up like hurting herself to get sent out to the infirmary. This is Lourna Dee, hurts herself just to get out to the infirmary to see what's going on, because she's been locked down into confinement and all that. And when she gets there, she realizes she's got a hard decision. She can't let Seston go through with killing Tasia, who's from the Pan Eta experience, is now, I think she's in a coma or whatever. She's on the bed, infirmary or whatever.
And Seston gets out like in a week or something like that.
Yeah, like she's on the cusp of getting out. And Lourna Dee realizes, okay, I've got nothing to lose here at this point. I've got to do this for her. Again, putting Seston in front and before her, and goes ahead and kills Tasia. Now, she was probably okay with killing Tasia anyways, because she was a total jerk to her the entire time.
Really.
No, not really. But she knows this is going to put her in a horrible position because, again, remember, we were just talking about how she was starting to finally kind of see the bigger picture here and starting to buy into the system. And she's got Whittick that's behind her, championing her the entire time, telling her that, you're my last chance. And she's taken that from he really wants the best for me kind of perspective, which is not the case. And so she's right on the cusp of really kind of going for all of this and really becoming somebody that she thinks she wants to be. And she goes through with the act and she kills Tasia. And so when that happens, of course, Whittick is removed from power at this point. I think Hest, or was it Hest? Weren't they both put under solitary confinement at this point?
Yeah, they were both basically put in the hot box.
The hot box, yep. But I mean, it's not a good thing for Lourna Dee at this point. Like everything that she'd been working up to, everything that you were starting to feel for her, she unfortunately went through with this act because she wanted Seston to be able to get out and see her two boys. So
Yeah, and I mean, it was a good thing for her relationship with Seston that Seston had been looking out for her, was trying to help her make the right decisions, and she gave her the I don't know. Seston was complaining though throughout this audio drama that she kept wanting Lorna to open up, and she was just so frustrated. This is much like a because this is like a Clark Kent Lois Lane type of thing where one always wants the other one to. You're hiding something from me. You just won't let me in. Why won't you let me in? Well, I've known you for about 20 minutes, so I don't know why you're so hard up to get into my life when I've known you for literally 20 minutes or a day or something like that. Now, over time, clearly they've known each other better, but they really have become friends. I mean, this is someone who that Lorna actually cares for, and Seston is a genuinely, or at least at this point, genuinely a good person. And Lorna recognizes that audibly and says to people like, why would you do this to someone who is good? And for Hest, it's just someone to control, to get that power back because she saw it just like Lorna did that if she doesn't do something like this to reassert herself, then Lorna will take over. And these folks are not they don't quite know who they have in their grasp, although they're about to find out that it is Lorna. Cause again, she keeps going under the name of,
Einan
oh gosh,
or
Einan,
Saul,
yeah.
Saul,
No, Sal. Yeah. Sal.
Sal
Yeah.
Cross. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll get to in part 6, the past, and this is where it starts. The audio drama becomes very dense in terms of stuff they're throwing at you. I
Right.
took a lot of notes here, so I'll try to be brief as much as possible. But there's some really good stuff in here. So now she's part of the Nihil, right? And this is I think we were talking about this where,
She's a storm.
yeah, she's got her own storm, and she's been invited to go meet Markion Ro, or not Markion, Asgar Ro, Markion's father, which when I heard that, I was like, holy crap. Because we've been talking about wanting to hear what that father relationship was like and what he was like. And we got a good amount of it, I think.
About like we'd
fair amount.
expected.
Yep. Pretty much what we expected.
Right.
I think he has we'll he's
We'll
still
talk about it.
but yeah, so she's called into no space. And before she goes, she gets her droid, her H7 droid, to file down her teeth. Which I don't remember them ever giving like the context as to why, other than it, we know that the males do it. The Twi'lek males do it. So it's a cultural thing. But I don't recall why, other than, I just took it as, okay, she wants to be menacing, right? She's part of the Nihil. She wants to be intimidating, and she's going to be going here. This is instead of putting on a gown, she gets her teeth filed down into razor sharp teeth. But
Well, it was very much, if you remember from earlier in the book, when she had the Mandalorian, when she was attacked by the Nihil on the ship, I forgot what the species of the creature was, but a very menacing thing. And I guess it licked her helmet. And she was like, I don't understand why that is. Maybe it was an alpha thing. And so I think this might be in response to some of that, where this is the very alpha thing to do. And she is asserting her power and making it clear who she is, that she is the top dog. She is the quote unquote male figure, in this life, that, no one can boss her around based on who she is or who they think she is. And she's just going to show them. But apparently this is a very painful process, or an uncomfortable process at the very least.
yeah. So she heads out there to the revel, which is what they do, right? The partying that they do after successful missions or whatever. And Pan introduces her to Asgar Ro. So and then there's Kazov, which was kind of cool. So we had Kazov back. Yeah. We had Pan, Asgar Ro, and then walks in this little Markion Ro guy who they made him seem very pathetic, I think, which is, I think, the point of this, all right.
Right.
And certainly you get the sense that they did not.
Asgar certainly put him down enough times.
Yes. Absolutely. And yeah, that whole relationship is pretty troubled between him and his son, which would explain why he had no qualms about beating the crap out of him, stepping on his head or kicking him in the head, several times before he finally killed him.
Right.
But you definitely get, Markion Ro makes these comments about, he makes one comment that I thought was interesting. He said the Great Hall was defenseless, right? Mentioning that, like, speaking to the lack of common sense or the lack of strategy that his father has. He doesn't really get it. He's, maybe too proud, boastful, too proud, whatever. But it feels like they're on different pages. And it's really cool because at the very end, we'll come to it in just a little bit here, when Asgar finally is approached by Lourna Dee. you get the sense of where, as much as they did not like each other, they are blood, and there's a reason why Marchion Ro has the power that he has, because the way they're looking at him, the way his father, the way Pan and Kazav are looking at him, the way his father's looking at him, you don't get there's no way. It's hard to even wrap your head around, how does he get the power that he has by the end of this? How does he make his way into becoming the actual Eye?
Right.
So there's a great speech by Asgar, and it's very, very similar, very much in the same vein of what Marchion Ro does, right? Rallying the troops, getting everybody. It's all kind of propaganda stuff. But the key point here is he mentions that one of the Tempest Runners, who we hadn't met yet, was it Zanhaven?
Zanhaven, right?
Yeah. So this Tempest Runner, there is a third Tempest Runner at this time named Zanhaven, has not paid his dues. So again, he gets into the whole thing about, a third for the third that goes to the Eye if they use the paths, a third goes to the Tempests themselves, and a third goes to everybody else. It's all kind of split up. But apparently Zanhaven,
it's been skimming a little off the top.
Yeah, a little bit, just a little bit. I think he didn't pay his was 1/3 or whatever it was, and so he's, in the eyes of Asgar Ro, he's a criminal. And of course, Zanhaven then lashes out, and this seems to be all part of a plan that Pan and Kazav had, where they were going to allow this to happen, and Zanhaven would then kill Asgar Ro, and they would then just kind of take over. This is the same kind of plan that Pan had in the Rising Storm.
Right. Yeah. So they're basically setting up Zanhaven. Zanhaven didn't know this was going to happen.
Yep. And so Zanhaven lashes out, runs out at Asgar Ro to kind of kill him before he's killed, because he knows what's coming. And Lourna jumps in front and protects Asgar Ro.
Protect the Eye.
Yep. So she protects him. She kills Zanhaven. And in the eyes of Asgar Ro, he's like, wow, this person's awesome, right? She's a hero. And so he immediately promotes her to Tempest, which throws, like, Kazav and Pan are like, what the heck? This is not at all. We were trying to get rid of the Eye and get rid of one of the Tempest Runners so they could be running things. Right. And they're back in that same position now. Not only that, but it's the same, for Pan. I mean, how does that make him feel? It's the same person that he just brought in that now got promoted to Tempest Runner.
Right, guys. She was the star of his Tempest, right? And he was all too happy to present her to Asgar and to flash her in front of, as the shiny object that's doing all these great things. But as soon as Asgar oversteps his bounds, and Pan's perspective and his way of looking at things is that, I don't think he necessarily has a problem with Lourna, although you could tell that Pan's conflicted. He is not happy. The voice acting right here was really, really good, and getting these subtle inflections going. But he's pissed because Asgar, just another example of him asserting more power than he's supposed to have and getting in the way, and what he believes holding them back. And really, they don't find a need for it. They can manipulate Marchion, right?
Yeah, that was the plan. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They want to get rid of Asgar because Marchion will be he's the easy one to boss around. He's this timid boy that's afraid of everything. And Asgar calls him boy all the time. Yeah. So it's very demeaning. And Marchion kind of plays to it, though, because he's always like, but we're undefended, kind of thing. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not much. But so, but yeah, to go ahead and promote one of his without consulting him, I think was just a slap in the face to Pan. And we all know that Pan does not really take too kindly to really any kind of usurpation of his power.
Yep. No, 100%. Yeah, he's not happy with it at all. He's always felt like he's the one that should be running it. I mean, that's been his MO since the very first book.
Yeah, they're not doing everything they could do, and they're certainly not making the profits they could make, especially him.
Yep. So Pan and Kazav kind of make a really bad decision here. They decide they're going to go to Lourna Dee,
bring her into the circle of trust.
Bring her into the circle of trust, and that backfires immediately because, and so they tell her, look, we're going to go out and kill Asgar Ro, take over the Nihil, we'll rebuild it in our own path, kind of thing. And so Lourna Dee finds out about this, and not only does she not go through with it, she runs off to Asgar Ro and tells them, look, these guys are about to try to kill you. And here's my plan. This is where I think she gets in over her head and really gets slammed down now, because she's starting to believe, oh, okay, I'm part of, he just promoted me to Tempest Runner. I get what he's trying to do. There's an opportunity here for me to kind of step up in power. And so she tells Asgar Ro, why don't we just kill them? She comes up with this whole plan. We won't get into the details. She comes up with the plan basically saying, look, we'll kill them. And then you and I together, we'll be a team. We're going to rebuild the Nihil. We'll use our paths, which was a huge mistake.
Right.
We'll use our paths and, become the rule of two, or we'll have be running the whole Nihil by ourselves. And Ro has a very sobering message to her and really lets her know that I appreciate your loyalty. However, at the same time, you are not a Ro. That Marchion Ro is, as much as he doesn't like him, right? He doesn't really go into detail, but as much as he doesn't like him, he is the heir to the Nihil.
To the Empire?
Oh, yeah, heir to the Empire, maybe. And the paths makes it very clear, the paths do not belong to you. Those belong to Marchion Ro. They belong to me. It's our birthright kind of thing. And she immediately has huge regrets. Like she's completely, read this the complete wrong way.
Right.
And at that point,
he does try to save it a little bit, though. I mean, he
does.
He's like, you are ambitious. And I like that. And you're going to do great things here.
Yeah.
But it was very much, we're going to make sure this is real clear, though.
Right.
I am the eye. You go do your stuff. I'm really the boss. So really Marchion, where we get him with, in like Rising Storm or some of the other books of him asserting this power that the eye has more power than maybe they originally set it up, really doesn't seem all that true. Like the way that the Tempest may have seen it. They've been having a problem with the eye having more control and more power than they believed was necessary or required or should have been, was not part of the design of an antiquated design. Of course, I think that they believe, but it wasn't something that they already saw a problem with it. So Marchion has really just continued that around. And I think we've seen that from Marchion with some of his speeches in the past of he believes that Asgard kept holding back, taking a more assertive step in that direction in order to not just be a bunch of pillagers, but actually do something of actual, I don't know, destruction.
Yeah.
Whatever his true end goal is here that we'll eventually learn.
Yep. There's I think it's this part that ends with what do you call it? Ro gaining power. So so they know Ro is going, sorry, I'm going to say Asgar. Asgar is going to be somewhere and she wants to get revenge now. Like she's like switching gears again now. She's like, okay, I got shut down by him. Why don't I go back in? I'll just finish the job. She's talking to her H7 droid. And I think he mentions that there's a path, that they've got a path stored up. And so she heads out.
H7, he cracked me up though. What's it worth to you? A droid that's like manipulating, she wipes his brain. Really
wish I have my notes up here and you can't see them, but I wrote in here like, come on, man. Even the droids in the Nihil are just.
Well, what's funny, when I was listening to it early on, I was like, why is a droid part of the Nihil? How does that work? And then this comes about later. I just laughed out loud when I heard it. I was like, that is just about right. But how is that even possible?
Exactly.
How does a droid have greed? It's fantastic.
So, and I'm
sorry to interrupt one more time.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think this speaks to, so why Lourna flip-flops so quickly here is a testament to, again, she feels like she's being used, that someone else is just using her for her gain.
Mm-hmm.
She is not in control of her own destiny. She's always going to have this foot on the back of her head that's not going to let her up. And it's just all of these feelings that have continued to be just a continuation of everything that's happened before, and at least in her perspective, just continue to happen. And she's just sick of it. And now she's going to these really extreme swings where she's like, okay, well, screw you, buddy. Now I am going to jump on board with these guys, even though I already betrayed them. And Ro called her out on that too. Well, how do you know I'm not going to betray you? Well, you already betrayed them. So, he called her out on all the things.
Yeah. And I think she was worried too that they would find out from him that she was behind all this. Right. And so the way she was going to eliminate this was to go back and kill Asgar Ro, which she does. So hold on. I got a question for you, because this is not very clear, right?
Right.
She says there's a path, like H7 says he's got a path over there. She's considering it. She's thinking about it. We get that. The next thing we know is someone killed him.
Right.
and he's laying dead. So if you
And Lourna strolls in unexpected.
sure.
Yeah.
So it's not, in my opinion, it's not definitive that she killed him.
It's
It's
heavily
still
implied, though.
heavily implied. But then you got to think, okay, so how many people are really left that have access to him to kill him like that? Markion Rowe still seems like he did not do it. Like, he does seem like surprised that his dad's laying there. I mean, he seems very happy that his dad's laying there bleeding out. But, Kaziv.
Right. How he reacted, you're right. It was very much of finding him and just finishing it off.
Right. But Kaziv seemed like he was surprised back in Light of the Jedi, right? He was like surprised that he was being accused of it, and tried to defend himself and say that it wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, really, is it Pan?
He's the only one that hasn't been accused yet.
And I don't know that we'll ever know. I mean,
I don't know if we're going to get his story now. He's kind of gone.
He's kind of gone. But yeah, we'll get to that here in a bit. But so yeah, I don't know. It is interesting. It's intriguing that there wasn't a definitive, yes, she jumped on him and cut his throat and let him bleed and all that. It just was, someone killed him, and she was the last person that was mentioned that was heading out that way. So presumably, but not 100%.
Really, he just stubbed his toe, tripped over, fell on the coffee table.
Bled out, hit the artery that's on your big toe there.
Right.
So Roe takes advantage of this opportunity, right? He brutally kills his dad. We know that already. But then he claims the Nihil. So he puts on the helmet and rallies the troops. And again, in the eyes of the Nihil, he does this in front of everybody else. He rallies everybody up behind him. And this is what he's good at. He becomes better at this as the novels have gone on. But yeah, that
shocks Kaziv and Pan. They did not expect this at all.
Not at all. Like, this has gone horribly, horribly wrong, which gives us the mindset that they're in coming into the Light of the Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, and how much they really despise Markion Rowe and everything he stands for, and the fact that they have to keep paying this punk his cut of the share, and he's got control of the paths. All of this just really, really eats at them, given they had an opportunity here to take power back, and they didn't do it.
Why don't you think they ever held this over Lourna? I mean, Pan's he holds a grudge, right? So why don't you think that he ever held this as a grudge over her? Because it seems like they really do have got along for a while, and maybe it's just because she was very successful under his Tempest, but it seems like this is something that he would have really not let go of for a very, very long time. And we don't know how much time has passed between these events and where we're at with Light of the Jedi. We don't know if that's years or whatever, but why don't you think that it seems like he's the guy, though. He would do that.
That Pan would hold this over Lourna's head?
Yeah, forever and ever. Like, this is all your fault because you didn't follow through with the original plan, and this all happened. Unless he really doesn't suspect Lourna, which I think he does.
Yeah, I imagine he suspects it was her. There's probably some kind of saving grace that happened if that's really what he thinks. But that's a good question, though. It never comes up. It's never mentioned. And there's, when we get to Rising Storm, was it Rising Storm or one of the books? I can't remember which one it was now, but there were, there was a moment in there where Pan was talking about, okay, maybe these two people that are going to run the Nihil are me and Lourna Dee. I think it was in this one that he was talking about it. I forget now. But he had plans with her at one point. Like, he was really starting to see, okay, maybe this is where it's going to go.
Rising Storm. No, yeah, definitely Rising Storm. Yeah.
Right. So he was thinking about those two as being in charge of the Nihil. So there is a part of him that, even though, yes,
he's got a soft spot.
He's got a soft spot, right? He at least sees the potential for his own probably sake and gain, not so much for hers. That he values strength,
I believe, and Lourna's about the only one that's probably up there with leadership and strength that he probably respects in any kind of way.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to part 7. We're almost done here because part 8's really short, but Reckoning is the next one here. And now we're only in the present, so there's no more past. It's all kind of real time. But we get back over to the ship, and Pan is basically attacking the ship. He's got his Storm or whatever group he's got that's behind him now. They're attacking the Restitution, and he's looking for Lourna Dee. Lourna knows immediately this has got to be Pan-Atia that's coming after him. Lourna then rallies all of the prisoners to stand up and fight. I mean, they don't really have a choice at this point. The gases come in. A lot of the systems are getting taken down one by one. There's at one point they're watching as these cell blocks are getting taken over and getting closer and closer over to K block, which is where they're at. and they decide to fight. So Quinn, Seston, Wittick, Fry, and a bunch of others all kind of form this team. And there was Pan finally makes his way to I guess he was the governor, right? They call him the governor. I assume he's like the main person running the restitution.
Yeah, it was weird. We didn't hear a whole lot from him throughout the whole, and then all of a sudden now he's here.
Yeah, he gives Pan makes him give a speech basically and says, look, hey, if the criminal known as Lourna Dee, you need to turn yourself in or whatever. He's saying whatever Pan wants him to say. And then suddenly he goes off in this whole kind of like, oh my God, I called the Jedi. They're going to kill me. And then boom, they kill him. So he's dead. And we don't get to hear anything from him after that. And that's when Pan takes over on the microphone and basically calls out Lourna Dee and says that, look, she needs to turn herself in and she's got 30 minutes. And if she doesn't do it in 30 minutes, he's going to blow up the entire ship. And on top of that, if there's anybody that knows where she's at and turns her over to him, not only will they'll get to live, but he'll send them off and they can be free. So there's an incentive there for anybody to
might be an opportunity to join, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good luck with that. And so this is she's in a pretty kind of strange predicament in that now she's got people that are potentially looking at her as maybe somebody that could turn her over. Hess and now Lourna Dee, they actually team up, and there's one part here I didn't put in the show notes and I wanted to, but it was just getting too long. But that whole moment where Fry dies, and I forget who else is with her. Maybe I can't remember if it was somebody a named character or just a nobody. But that whole thing about staying in the middle of the vents, when they're kind of going through the vents and they realize they're being followed, and she stays behind and she's got a hurt leg and she ends up sacrificing herself to let everybody get by or to say that was all right out of Aliens. Like that scene where they're like in there and the aliens are coming and she's got the grenade and she kills herself and the other dude. Right out of Aliens. I could not get that out of my head, and I'm sure that was on purpose. But anyways, shout out to Cavan for calling out for using.
He's a huge horror fan. Yeah,
it was good stuff. But to kind of fast forward, Hess decides that I never got whether this was a real plan. I think the plan was to dupe him, but she gives herself up to Hess because Hess is like, we've got to turn her in, and everybody's like, no, we can't. And Lourna is the one that says no. She's right. For the sake of everybody that's here, again, putting other people first here, that little bit of light that's still in her, I'm going to go ahead and just turn myself in so that you guys can live. And so be it. It can be Hest, even though they've been paired up and they've had their problems. And, you thought for a moment there that maybe the things were going to be fine, but they really aren't. Hest then puts a knife to her neck and they head out to go see Pan. And it's there where, Pan shoots Hess like he just, I think she was going to use her as a bargaining chip, right? Hess was going to use Lourna Dee as a bargaining chip, and Pan wasn't having any part of it. So he ends up shooting her, killing her.
Well, we had this before too, when some of Pan's Tempest said, "Hey, I'm annihilating it." Blast. Yeah, they were done too. They just don't care. The one thing that's a little inconsistent here with Lourna, though, when they were out in isolation, and Pan started attacking, she was terrified and wanted to get away and wanted to escape. So it's a very big switch to this moment here where she's all of a sudden now wanting to sacrifice herself in some capacity. And I don't know if that's just because maybe I misunderstood or misinterpreted when she was getting out of the box. She was, I need to get out of here, but I'm going to get Seston and Quinn and these others out of here too. Maybe I missed that part of it, but she was scared witless, and now to be just okay with going in front of him, which surely would have meant her death. And she has no secret. She knows that if she's one-on-one with Pan, she likely is not going to survive.
Yeah, I think it was probably more of her not feeling like there was anything left. Like she didn't have any options. Like earlier on, hey, I got to get out of here. But at this point, they've pretty much taken over the restitution. Yeah. They've got him pinned down. Like they had made their way to, what was it? Wasn't like what do you call it? The airlock or air chamber? Not, what am I calling it? Like a port of some sort. Mm-hmm. Whatever it was, I felt like they were already at a point where they had nowhere else to go. Like they've been pinned down. They got away, but there were no exits in that room anymore. They were just done. And eventually it was just a matter of time. And so I felt like maybe at that moment she was like,
droids were deployed and all that.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even get into the scav droids that are running rampant in here and the hacking that Quinn does as well. But which plays kind of a huge role a little bit later, because Quinn does have a background in hacking or slicing. But yeah, so I think at that point she was like, okay, well, we're kind of at a dead end. There's nothing else that's going to happen. He's going to blow the ship up. All these people that I was trying to save, I don't really have a way to save them now. This is the only, I felt like maybe this was like the only opportunity she had left, and which is to turn her over and maybe have, let the cards fall where they may. Maybe there was going to be depending on how things played out, maybe there was going to be an opportunity for her to get away or kill Pan, or she just didn't know. So she was willing to kind of go with it and kind of roll the dice kind of thing.
Right.
Maybe not. But one of the more important things was when they get over to Pan had already, and we didn't really get into this, but Pan had told his team, the crew that he assembled here, that they were going to turn Lourna Dee in, and they were going to get the money, get some kind of a big reward. And it becomes very clear to his own team that Pan he's not going to turn her in. He wants to kill Lourna Dee. And they're looking at this going, wait a minute, we did not sign up for this. We want the money. You're out here on a vendetta. You're out here for revenge. And so they turn their guns on Pan at that point. So everybody's got the guns pointed at Pan. Lourna's standing there. She's kind of got the advantage at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of skipped over Quinn programming the droids, the scav droids, and there's kind of a battle there and all of that. But once that happens, Lourna finally gets revenge. She lashes out at Pan, beats the crap out of him, and she has an opportunity. She makes him get down on his knees, and she has an opportunity to put a blaster between his eyes, and he's screaming at her to do it. Like, this is it. Right. He's so, either he wants her to kill him because he's just done. I mean, he's on death's door at this point. And he wants her to do it because, with the subcontext of all of this is there are moments where he's starting to see, or Lourna's talking, and he's starting to realize, like, you're trying to be somebody that you're not. You're talking about all these things. You're trying to save all these people. That's not you. So go ahead and just do what you would normally do, which is kill me right here, right now, and prove to everybody and prove to yourself that you're not a rehabilitated person. You're not a person who's touched the light or is moving towards the light. You are the same person you've always been, the same person that's been controlled by everybody else. Like, he is just egging her on to do it, and she doesn't. She decides to not do that and just turn him over, and that's how that part ends.
Yeah, I mean, she's trying to apply she still has hope for herself that she can make a different decision and do something better than what she's been. And so good on her to continue trying to go down that path, even though she's still comes across roadblock after roadblock after roadblock of actually being successful in that path. But she's at least trying, and she's giving him a chance. I think the other thing, though, she knows that Pan has not a lot of time left to live. And she kind of wants Pan to suffer a little bit, I think, too.
Maybe, yeah.
Right. And under Republic, rehabilitation and stuff, I'm sure he would find that true suffering. And again, he's on borrowed time anyway, so who knows if he would actually live, unless the Republic found a way to actually cure him, maybe with the magic Bacta stuff.
Magic Bacta. It's all the rage these days. Okay, we'll get into the last part, which is part 8, Rebirth. It's very short, very quick. But Lourna just very quickly finds out, like, again, she's now made a decision not to kill somebody, to not be that same person she thinks she is. And she then finds out that Whittick had a medical condition, and there's been clues, right? He's been coughing throughout all of this in the last couple latter chapters here, or latter parts. Right. And she comes to find out that he's going to be medically discharged in just a couple of weeks, and that he's got something really bad with him. I think he's terminal. I kind of read it at that. I don't know if that was really the intent, or if they said it outright. Do you remember?
Sure sounded like it.
Yeah. Like he was going to be passing here soon. But so the whole reason he kept saying, you're my last hope, you're my last effort. And, was really trusting her and wanting the best for her wasn't about her. It was about him. Felt like he believed in this program so much. And here was an opportunity. It hadn't worked out. It was corrupt. And yet here was this one person that he felt like if he dies, he could at least die for his own personal self, die in knowing that he was able to rehabilitate one person, that the system did work, that, somebody did believe in him, and that he was making a good effort and all that. And so she sees that and realizes he didn't want anything to do with me. Like, this was not about me at all. It was always about him. And she goes into this rage, like a rampage of you're just like Bala. You're just like Oppo. You're just like Asgard, right? Everybody was using me, and I've never again still been, anybody, but I've never been anyone but someone's greatest work, someone's, whether it was a new soldier or a new Tempest or, rehabilitated person, whatever it was, it's never been anything that I wanted to do. It's never been on my terms. I've always been putting on these masks and playing these different roles, doing what people want me to do. And she's had enough. And there was a moment in there where he mentions that there's only one blaster bolt left. And she rallies everybody together and says, look, this is a new day kind of thing. And you can either stay where you are now and be arrested and go back to the restitution, or you can come with me. Most of you know me. She's got the trust of a lot of these prisoners now because of what she's done and how she was able to fend off the Nihil as much as she did. She has got Pan there, and mentions that there's one blaster bolt left. Sorry, who was it? Forget the guy's name now. Wittick. Wittick says there's one bolt left, right? One blaster bolt left. And this whole thing ends. Wait, did we talk about Pan dying?
No.
I missed that.
I think we missed a part here.
Yep. So Pan does die officially. I think he's finally dead too. Like dead.
No, Lourna actually puts him down.
Yep.
In the head. Yeah.
So sorry about that. I got caught up in this next part.
He had tried attacking her, I think, or something like that, right? Because she wouldn't do it. I think he tried to attack her, and she just goes in and pulls the trigger.
Right. But
self-defense.
Yeah. So sure. But the question I guess that the question I have is, she's got one blaster bolt, and while she's doing this, Seston is like, "Stop, Lourna, this is not you," right? And then she flips out about her, flips out almost at Seston, but shut up, this is me.
I don't know me, yeah.
Right? I know who I am now. This is all very clear to me, very eye opening, and finally, Wittick says, "You've got one blaster bolt left. There's only one more shot in your blaster," and she fires a shot. Like, you hear it, but we don't know who she used it against. And I guess the way it was kind of leading up to was, she was very angry, upset, hurt, destroyed, devastated, whatever, by Wittick and what he was doing, that I assume that she shot him and killed him. But we don't get any kind of closure there, I don't think, either. So what are your thoughts? Who was it that she used that last bolt on?
I don't know. Or maybe she didn't use it on anybody. Maybe she just made sure Pan was extra dead. That's always a possibility. That doesn't make sense to kill him, I guess. Otherwise, and I guess, again, we're not sure if she was, I think what they were trying to present it as was she going to kill Wittick, or was she going to kill Seston? Well,
Seston's free, yeah.
Well, right, but at the time, though, because like you said, she was getting pissed at Seston because Seston's trying to say, this isn't who you are. And she's like, how do you know who I am?
Mm-hmm.
Prying into my life, basically, over the last however many months or whatnot. And so, but yeah, so I started to put this ploy of which one was she going to take out. And it gets a little confusing there about what Wittick was. I mean, was Wittick really putting her in a position that you've got to kill one of us? It just didn't make much sense to me of, that this is what you want for people, and you're putting like basically an ultimatum. And I don't know that Dee, it was confusing about whether this was who she was, or did she just give up and say, I'm just going to do everything, whatever I want now. And
I think that's
Wittick. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's how it was. And because the chapter, this part is called Rebirth. And I took that, I'm taking this as it was a rebirth of her as the person that she wants to be, which is making whatever decision she wants to now, regardless of who's involved and
in control of her life.
Yeah. I mean, she mentions that at the very last thing, towards at the very, very end there. But, yeah, I mean, it's her killing Wittick. That was the only, again, there's very few people in her life that I think were ever really in tune with her and in touch with her brother, who's dead, Wittick, who's dead, Opa Rancisis, who's still around. But beyond that, there's only Seston left. So going back to that whole thing, that theory of like, is she ever going to be redeemed? I think it's still possible. We've got a lot of time here, right? But I don't know. There are very few people that I think are going to be able to kind of touch at that and pull her back in at this point, given where she's at and where she's going now, especially at the very end here. So,
right, I mean, exactly, because now she's, when she confronts Ro and Zetar, It's a very different playing field than
Yeah.
than where the last time they left and when he let her hang out to dry.
Yep. So we do get a quick kind of update on where Seston's at. The Defense Coalition finds an escape pod kind of floating around, and they open it up, and it's Seston in there. So she allowed her to leave. Probably in my head canon, she forced her to get out of there and sent her on that and said, "You're going to do this. I don't care. This is what you need to do." And
Yeah.
so
Go to your
presumably,
kids,
yeah, go to your kids, right? Presumably, she's going to be reunited with her kids, and she got her liberty that she was going to get anyway. So I mean, so that is there's really no reason, even if she was maniacal and evil, I can't see why she would even do anything to Seston, because Seston has never done anything wrong to her. So it was good to see that she allowed her to leave. But then everybody else, like Quinn and even like Hest's people, the people that were loyal to Hest, have now joined her. And so she makes this call out to Marchion Ro at the very, very end of this novel. Marchion Ro calls Zetar, who we learned is one of the more recent Tempests in the Rising Storm. And he mentions, like, how many ships do you still have left? He says he's got 9 left. So including his, exactly. And Ro doesn't have any, right?
He's got the gaze. That's about it.
Pan's is gone. And then you've got Lourna Dee. Hers is gone. All she's got is now this Restitution, who she's claimed the ship now as a Nihil ship. So it is a very interesting situation now going into Wave 3 of where Lourna Dee is and where Marchion Ro is, where the Nihil are. Because even though, Ro has the leveler and he's got this device that negates laser bolts and all that, those seem pretty effective, but they don't have the forces they're going to need to go up against, in my opinion, right now. They don't have an army to go up against the Jedi, much less the Defense Coalition, who seems to be growing in terms of size, right?
Right.
But to your point, the way she speaks to Ro feels like she is now asserting herself as the leader, or at least on level playing field with him. Which
I think that's fair. Yeah.
That's probably where it's going to go most likely. I don't think she's going to try to usurp him, but I think she is definitely going to be like, okay, this whole idea that everybody's always had where there's only needs to be 2, myself or, 2 Tempests, and then that's it. That's where we are right now, Ro. And I'm in control. I'm the captain now, right? That little meme thing. I'm the captain now. So we'll see how this plays out. But he does sound, at least the way Mark Thompson came across and portrayed that moment for Marchion Ro, it felt like he was almost kind of intimidated or almost scared and willing to listen at least to what Lourna Dee has to say. That said, I wouldn't put it past him to play this role of, okay, I'll do what you say, and then turn around and find a way to manipulate her or backstab her and all that. That just seems very Marchion Ro. So
sure. Well, and that's what we learned from Light of the Jedi, is that of the Tempests, Lourna Dee was always the most difficult one for him to truly figure out what she was thinking. She was very close to the chest most of the time of what she was thinking about, what her goals were, what her interests were, about what her ambitions were. And for her now to just be really open and very forceful about it has got to be, he's got to be very taken aback. And I guess if there was one that he would fear, in any kind of way, Lourna would probably be it. While Pan had the brawn and the might aspect of it, and Kassav to an extent, although they had the dependency problems, the smash issues. Lourna is the very calculating one. They're the ones that you don't always know where they sit. You don't know how they do the things they're doing. They kind of do their own. They're kind of off in their own way of doing things, but they're still very successful at it.
mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem like he has a lot of insight as to how she's run her Tempest in the past. And now he has absolutely no idea what she's recruited here. And we don't know how many people are with Lourna at this point.
True.
But they present it in a way that makes it seem like she's at least stronger than Zetar's. Although from a number of ships, that can't be true. But maybe from a number of people, because not all the ships have a ton of people. Right. And presumably this is a huge prison. So presumably there's a bunch of people that weren't dead.
Yeah. I mean, and that could be how the Nihil gain their ranks back, at least temporarily for now, right? To be effective again, is and that could be Marchion Ro's, how he's seeing the situation is like, okay, well, Zetar really doesn't have anybody. I don't have anybody. And she's got a whole ship of prisoners. Why don't we just use that for our force and rebuild and regroup kind of thing? So, but there is one, I want to get your thoughts on this, and that line at the very end, he's talking about, he's got the leveler and he's kind of bragging, not really bragging, but he's saying he's got he's got some leverage here and he's got some power. And she says, I have something far more effective. And she doesn't say what it is that she's speaking about, other than, I mean, I took it as okay, maybe it's her speaking about.
I thought he said that. I thought Ro said that.
Was it Ro?
Yeah.
Man,
he was talking to Zetar. Yeah. He was still talking to Zetar. And,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll then I won't go into that. There was honestly, I was coming off my notes that I took a few months ago. So, okay. Well, if that makes way more sense if it's Markion Ro saying I've got something more effective, which then he would be alluding to, of course, the leveler and the device that negates blaster bolts, which is all very intriguing. Like, I can't wait till we get to see that in action and see what that does to the Jedi and how that's just going to level them.
Right.
Or
and this was the premise of the question for this past week of, who was a bigger threat at this point. And I think a lot of people viewed it as, and I could see why, Ro has the leveler, which will help negate the Jedi. The energy disruptor will basically incapacitate a lot of different, both Republic and Jedi.
mm-hmm.
But I think from just an individual, I think Lourna is probably by far the most intimidating one, and the one who is ruthless enough to just to be relentless and carry it forward and carry it out. Ro has perhaps the better tools at this point, but he doesn't have the support and doesn't have the people around him either. Whereas Lourna has inspired that type of confidence with the people around her in her new
Yes.
Tempest, to where you don't know how fanatical people will be. Although it seemed more like the Enterprise all of a sudden, everyone on the bridge getting along and having a tea party on the bridge and being nice to each other. Storm Quinn, Quinn's been upgraded to a Storm, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I know. I agree. Like, that was the, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't include it in the notes, but it is important. The way they are responding to Lourna Dee is very different than the way the Nihil responded to her in the past, probably, but definitely the way they've responded to Pan, Kazav, Zetar, or even Markion Ro. She has momentum. She has their spirit. She has, even though those other guys are cheering for Ro and all that, they know at any given moment they're going to get shot. It feels like she's coming into this as a true leader now, right? And she has the will of the people, if you will. She's got them, and they're going to do what they want. And she doesn't come across, like, the way she treats Quinn is very different than I think any other relationship. Like, there's almost like a level of mutual respect, the way she talks to her. And it could be the way Almasi that did the voice for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it could be the way she portrayed it, but it came across as her seeing, maybe not on the same level, but there's a level of mutual respect there. She respects Quinn respects her. That's a really different dynamic, and a good dynamic to have in a leadership role, to have somebody that's working at that level, right? And that would be really cool to see her rebuild Nihil, not in this kind of scare tactic, you could die at any moment kind of thing, but really a truly what do you call it? An ideal, right?
Okay.
It's hard to kill an ideal. And
right.
I wonder if that's really what's going on here. She's now, it's become an ideal, and that's very more potent. That's very much more dangerous than just having people with big blaster guns and ships and gas and stuff like that. So,
right. Yeah. And a couple thoughts there. I think when it comes to Ro, many of the people, and again, we don't know how many are Nihil that make up Lourna's new Tempest, and how many are just prisoners, but presumably many of those don't know who Markion Ro is. So their allegiance is to Lourna,
true.
and they don't understand the structure of the Nihil, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't really view themselves potentially as Nihil. They view as part of Lourna's crew. I think that's one thing. I think now with Quinn, I think this was interesting because Quinn had a decent arc, because early on, Lourna thought that she was completely incompetent. She goes, "How did you even make Cloud? Like, you're the worst Cloud ever," basically. Right. And it ended up because she was in the wrong job. And this is where I thought you gravitated and probably grabbed onto this really quickly. You start to see someone that, why did they have you there? You should have been in engineering, because Quinn's got this slicer mentality. She's able to fix things. She has a lot of ingenuity with some of these things, and she's in the wrong job. And then Lourna sees that and rewards that, and also just
praises it.
You cultivate that, right? You grow that in, like a good leader would, right? And you get somebody out of the bad spot knowing it's not a bad person, it's just a bad fit, right? And it's just interesting that there's a Nihil person who recognizes this, where typically they don't. They're like, you failed at that job that I gave you. I don't care if it's not what you're good at.
Yeah.
You didn't do it well. So sorry, you're done. Yeah.
Yeah. She even says, I think she calls her out like, she mentions to Quinn, says something like, oh, that's the best slicer in the galaxy. Like really like
Right.
over the top, enthusiastic about Quinn. And Quinn hears this and is like, oh, wow, thank you. It's very sweet of you, kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a very different style of leadership, which is going to be interesting as it gets integrated and mixed in with what Marky and Rose doing and what Zetar is doing and what the Nihil have traditionally done.
Right.
But, okay, so the last thing, the Lourna Dee comment at the very end, she makes it, I think it was, I forget who it was, whether it was Zetar or Ro asked what the name of the ship was. And she tells Quinn, hey, Quinn, why don't you tell everybody what the name of the ship is? And she's like, it's the Lourna Dee. And you get that famous, the line that was echoed earlier about, and don't you forget it, comes up, and it's essentially how the whole audio drama ends. So,
right. And I think she was probably looking right into Rose's eyes when she said that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it was a great arc. There was a lot of growth. Certainly when you look over the expanse of her life, really, all the way from the beginning, and you totally get where she's coming from and where she's been and why it's so important for her to kind of create her own path given what she's been through. So, and I don't know, man, I really enjoyed the way it ended. I enjoy what we're getting ourselves into. I'm very interested to see what gets picked up from the comics, because Edge of Balance didn't have, I don't want to spoil anything for Edge of Balance, but it's kind of its own story that could potentially lead to other things, but very still separate from all of what's going on. It's going to be interesting to see how those two things come together at some point. But the comics are, we've got, well, we won't get into it. Let's just say that it is going to be interesting to see how this all kind of continues with Lourna Dee in this position and, this new power, this newfound purpose, this rebirth, if you will.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so I think overall, this hasn't been one of my favorite books, I guess, if I'm going to classify it with some of the books. It hasn't been at the top of my list. It was very solid, though. It was very good. I think I'd probably rather read this one than listen to some of it. So I'm interested to see if they'll do what they did with Afra and make that
March 1st.
Oh, is that really? They're going to put this into.
It's the worst kept. No, it's the worst kept rumor in the world. There is if you go out to some of the publishers, there is a book called Proxima that has been, and that's the working title. There's no image. It's just called Proxima, and it's scheduled for March 1st. But if you follow leaks and all of that stuff, there's been a number of people that have confirmed that Proxima is the code name for the release of the script. So I have a picture of what it looks like too.
6 months later.
Yeah, it's a while. Well, we got that's how. Well, remember Jedi Law Dooku
Afra.
and Afra too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it was forever before we got it. So
that is true. I forgot about that one.
So yeah, I don't know what the deal is. I'm sure it has to come down to, he's got a script and he's got things written out, but like he was talking about, again, like the names haven't been finalized on some of this stuff. So there's some work that needs to go into
action a little bit more in a book. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It takes more to flesh that out than just, well, I wrote the script. Here's the script. Just publish the script. Although that's how they advertised that book right there. I've got Afra behind me, and that's how they advertise that one. That's a script, but it's really not. It's still a book, even though it was translated from the comics. But yeah,
I'm sure we will, which will be helpful too, because I don't even know what half these names are. I wrote just all kinds of gibberish down if it wasn't already included in the credits.
I think you did pretty well. Yeah. Good on you, man. But I think so. I agree with you, though. Even though it wasn't necessarily my favorite storytelling and not my favorite material from Cavan Scott, I think it was still necessary to see where she's at now, even though it was very disjointed where we had seen her in Rising Storm. I think where she ends up at the end of this one, again, kind of reasserts herself as more of the Lourna Dee that we thought we knew, but in a much more confident and bold and really empowered,
assertive
position. Yeah, much more assertive, of course. Yeah, and no longer in the shadows. And she's not taking the orders now. She is going to give them, and she's not going to back down from that anymore. And so we'll have to see if that plays out, or if she resorts to kind of old habits again, because every time she's made a swearing to not ever do it again, she ends up doing it again. So hopefully she's finally learned that lesson.
Yeah, she was.
Now I think she's a legitimate threat. I mean, again, she's even a more legitimate threat than she has been in the past.
Yep, I was gonna say she was the rising storm that quietly went into the shadows and then came out of the dark to extinguish the light of the Jedi. And with that, we'll leave it right there. Okay, let's get out of here. We didn't do it under 2 hours, but we weren't kidding ourselves. It wasn't going to happen. So
yeah, that was more of a joke. I think originally in the Twitter post, I think I wrote like 6 hours.
Oh, well, we could have hit that. That was easy.
Well, I didn't want to scare people away.
Yeah, that would have turned people off. I'm not watching.
I was even worried about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Damn, no one's ever going to watch this show. So, hey, we appreciate everyone that showed up tonight. We know that we called some of you out there at the beginning of the show. We also know there's some people in the shadows that just like watching, don't necessarily comment. So thank you so much for showing up. We appreciate it. Again, we're doing this on a Tuesday. I think we're planning on doing this again next Tuesday.
Yes, next Tuesday. Yep.
Right. Resume our Rising Storm coverage, and we will do a Patreon after show, but here in just another day or so, we will get that recorded and pump that out to you guys. So,
and I've got 2 Patreon comic issues done. I just need to release them, and they're audio only. We'll talk about that later, but they're audio only. But I need to get these out because Cavan is not stopping. I can't keep up with this dude. He just keeps cranking out
relentless
stuff. Yep. So I need to get off my butt here and get those out. So I've got those 2 coming up, and I'm going to try to get caught up on the main title with some background and stuff on the main comic title there. So those will be coming out. We've got, like Jonesy said, the Patreon episode coming out next Tuesday. We'll come back. We're doing Rising Storm, but it's probably going to be a combination of Rising Storm with a lot of themes and stuff that's happened post Rising Storm. So
right, yeah, we're going to start kind of looking at the factions of sorts and probably through the lens mostly of Rising Storm, but we're going to have to pull from a lot of different ways. So when we talk about the Jedi, like where's generally, and we've talked about this in other capacities, but generally, where are they coming from? Where are they going to? What are their what are the things they're doing well, and what are the things they are really screwing up? And then we'll talk about some individuals, I'm sure, along the way, and maybe we'll come back and do some individual character dissections at some point.
Yep. And as of this recording, the High Republic show for this month is coming out this Friday. I'm like I'm going to call it 95% sure that it'll be out either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday. It's this week. How about that? So we should get the covers for Wave 3 as well. So looking forward to that. Okay.
Wow, you're right. This is just coming at us as fast as we can go. Well, and then the other thing is so War of the Bounty Hunters is only 4 or 5 issues long, and then now they're going to Wave 2 of that one's going to start with the Crimson Reign, which is going to focus on Kira, right?
Kira, yeah.
Which actually looks potentially really interesting, and so it's just all over the place. Every which timeline we're in, we've got material except sequel trilogy apparently.
Oh darn! Poor us.
Easy, Mike.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly.
All right. Well, my friend, it was fun.
Now, good seeing you. We'll be back again for the Patreon later this week. And otherwise, we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Don't you forget it.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.